interference was killing you as we waited to get started. So welcome to our meeting of the San Rafael City Council. Today is Monday, October 17th. I'll request that the city clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Bushy.
Present.
Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Vice Mayor Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Yeden Skalati.
Present.
Mayor Kate.
Present. All 5 of us are here this evening. I'm going to invite the city attorney to report out. We had a closed session on October 11th.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Kate, members of the council. No reportable action was taken in closed session at that meeting.
Thank you. So welcome, everyone. We are glad you are here. We are in a hybrid format. So we have folks in the room, which is still such a great thing that we're all getting used to, as well as folks tuning in virtually. And thank you to the staff, some here, some tuning in. You all do an incredible job working for our community and making it work so well every single day behind the scenes. And I like to start the meetings with just a few comments about things going on. And tonight I'm going to touch on the fact that San Rafael is a cultural art district. We're one of only 14 in the state of California. And this year there's going to be, fingers crossed, some additional funding coming down from the state. So this past Friday, along with Councilmember Hill and staff, we toured around 2 state elected officials that are on the Cultural Arts District Commission. And we showed off all the great things here in San Rafael. We started at Youth and Arts. We went over to the Marin Society of Artists. We went to Falkirk, went to Christopher B. Smith Film Center, which of course their film's going on with Mill Valley. We went to Artworks, and let me tell you, our town showed off so well, and they really, really enjoyed the tour. In fact, one of the feedback that they gave was they really saw how we took this cultural art designations and we're able to elevate everything that we're doing around the art. So stay tuned, keep our fingers crossed that we can get some additional funding to continue to promote this great asset that we have downtown. So in addition to art that you can see every weekend, we do have some upcoming specific events that I'm happy to share with you on the art theme. We have a community art project that has been worked on for the last couple of years, and there'll be an unveiling this Saturday at Arbor Park. So that's in Terra Linda. On Saturday, event starts at 11 and goes till 12:30. All are welcome. We'll hear from the artists. I'll get to say a few words. Vice Mayor will, Supervisor. But more importantly, you will see a fantastic piece of art that came from a community process. So it will be a really incredible event. After that, you can come downtown. It's the Dia de los Muertos car procession and altar display. That starts at 3 p.m. So there'll be a car procession, and then there'll be altars that are unveiled that day, and they'll be up through November 5th. And on the following weekend, we have trick or treat Saturday from 1 to 3. So really just highlighting all the great things you can do in downtown as we still kind of keep emerging from COVID. It's just another encouragement to bring the family down. We have free parking in our garages on the weekend. So hope to see you at one of those events. Before I turn it over to the city clerk, I would like to include a land acknowledgement. Present day San Rafael is located in the traditional lands of the coastal Miwok people, and we recognize this history as well as those who still reside here. So with that, I will turn it over to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Before we begin, I'd like to announce that tonight's city council meeting will include Spanish language simultaneous and consecutive interpretation provided by qualified interpreters on the Spanish channel now through the completion of the city manager and city council reports. If you're watching on Zoom, you can join the Spanish channel by clicking on the interpretation icon in the Zoom toolbar. It looks like a globe. And we posted a link on the Zoom meeting in the description of the video on YouTube. If you're attending in person and don't have access to the Zoom meeting from your mobile device, you can see me. We can get you set up on a device so that you can listen to the meeting in Spanish. As a reminder, we ask that everyone participating tonight, please speak slowly to allow our interpreter to effectively express your comments. And I'll invite Pablo.
Bueno, bienvenidos, y antes de comenzar, nos gustaría anunciar que la reunión de esta noche incluirá interpretación simultánea y consecutiva en vivo, proveída por intérpretes calificados en el canal de español desde ahorita hasta que terminemos con los reportes y reportes del ayuntamiento. Si ustedes están participando o viendo a través de Zoom, puede unirse usted al canal de interpretación haciendo clic en el icono de interpretación en la barra de herramientas de Zoom, que ahora aparece como un globo terráqueo. También hemos publicado el enlace de Zoom a la reunión el enlace de Zoom de esta reunión en la descripción del video en YouTube. Si están atendiendo en persona y no tienen acceso a Zoom para esta reunión de su dispositivo móvil, por favor, vengan a verme y yo les voy a dar a ustedes unos audífonos y un dispositivo para que puedan oír la reunión en español. Como un recordatorio, también les pedimos a todos los participantes de esta noche que hablen de manera más despacio para permitir a que nuestros intérpretes efectivamente expresen sus comentarios.
Thank you. The meeting tonight is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube, where members of the public can provide public comment by phone by calling 669-900-9128 and use the meeting ID 899-2635-9885 and pressing *9 to raise your hand for comment. Or you can comment and watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda and use the raise hand feature through Zoom. If you experience any technical difficulties, you can email me at city.clerk@cityofcenterfell.org. Displayed on the podium and on the projector is a 2-minute timer to help you stay within the 2-minute time frame. You're invited, though not required, to introduce yourself and tell us what part of Centerfell you reside in, or if you're from outside Centerfell. We're offering closed captioning for this evening's meeting, and you can select live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature. Thank you.
Thank you. First item is open time for public expression. This is anything not on tonight's agenda. I did receive a card from Jeff Rhodes, and you don't have to fill out a card. So if you want to speak, you can speak after Mr. Rhodes. Come on down.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Rhodes, Executive Director of Resilient Shore. For the last 7 years, we have focused on addressing Centerfell sea level rise and flood risk reduction. Last week, Kathy Schaefer and I met with Centerfell's new adaptation planner, Kate Hageman. We came away convinced that she has the right stuff, and we are committed to helping her succeed in her new role. Bringing Ms. Hageman on board is a watershed moment for the city. We thank the City Council, Jim Schutz, and city staff for their commitment in addressing these existential threats. Up to now, we've been working together to have the policies and action in place in our general plan and local hazard mitigation plan. And Public Works and Community Development have overseen and prepared excellent technical reports. Until now, this hasn't been sufficient to secure planning grants. Bringing Kate on board represents a financial commitment by the city. It shows skin in the game. Centerfell is now in the best position to secure grants and private contributions to create an actionable, stakeholder-driven shore and watershed adaptation plan. This will enable our stakeholder partners and communities to proceed with a broad range of adaptation projects, including sustainable wetlands creation and hybrid projects to protect our communities at risk. With a coordinated partnership, including the city, NGOs, and stakeholders, we are positioned to secure the funding for the adaptation plan and programmatic environmental clearance. Once completed by the council and adopted by the council, we will have stakeholder support as they will advocate for completion of their projects. We can then proceed with funding, designing, permitting, and implementing specific projects. A hearty thanks to you all for making this possible.
Thank you, and thank you for your ongoing advocacy in this realm. Thanks, Jeff. Anyone in the chambers like to approach the council on any item not on the agenda? Come on down.
Good evening. My name is Richard O'Brien. I'm here with Hunter Spencer, Mike Mahoney's godson. I am the son of Richard Mary O'Brien, who the Citizen of the Year Award was set up to honor by Mike Mahoney in 2001 after my father's death. I'm here tonight to implore you not to vote to change the name of the award that is on the consent calendar. We collectively feel the city cannot legally change the name of the award. The trust documents do not give the city any power in that regard. There is no valid reason to change the name of the award. In the staff report you just received, dated October 17th, 2022, no real reason is given to change the name of the award. There's nothing offensive about the word citizen, especially in the context of an award named after immigrants. I've participated in all deliberations since 2004 when I became the family's representative on the committee. In the parts of the committee, we have never asked the status of nominees and never considered even mentioned these at the meetings. Also, the staff report that you received is full of errors. In 2001, the award was set up to honor my father. My mother's name was not added until 2005. The City Council does not make the selection. It's made by a committee that I'm part of. It was originally administered by the Planning Commission, which my father served on for 16 years. Members of the city don't even know who my parents are. In fact, the latest email I got referred to them as my grandparents. The O'Brien family and the Mahoney clan are against the name of the change of the award and adamantly oppose it. Citizen of the Year has a weight to it and implies that the recipient is very special. Public Service Award sounds like something a student would get for just a few hours of community service. Again, I implore you not to change the name of the award. Thank you.
Thank you. And that item actually is on our agenda. So when we get to consent calendar, we will pull item 4C off and ask the city attorney's office to respond. Anyone else like to approach the council on anything not on the agenda? I don't see one in the chambers. Is there anyone virtually?
I do see a few hands raised.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
This is Ava Crisanti. You know, for over a year, I asked you to put the issue of the quote SSA, unquote, police run, majority Black and Latino homeless internment camp under a freeway with no bathroom showers or electricity on the agenda. And I asked you to make some improvements to move those people into hotel rooms because a woman had died at that camp. And, you know, I was shot down by the mayor, her cronies, her, you know, just the regular, usual trash from Marin County, like moneyed trash is the best way I can describe you guys. A week and a half ago, the New Yorker magazine, which is known for having the most rigorous fact-checking department in the publishing industry, ran an article on that internment camp. And it described the conditions as, quote, abject, unquote. And I would point out that the New Yorker is a very white-gloved publication. It has a very influential readership. And it is a polite magazine. So when those conditions are described as abject, and when the overall message of the piece is that it was cruel and you could have done it in a more humane manner, it is absolutely damning. And yet there will still be no consideration of the mistakes made. The CPRA that I ran indicated that it was 3 people, Kate Collin, Damon Connolly, and Senator Mike McGuire, who put this infernal camp together. You guys need to be prosecuted. There needs to be a full investigation by the Attorney General. And the death of Ms.
Yeah, this is John Reynolds. Do you hear me? There might be some echo. I think I.
No, you sound fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to raise 3 things.
No, you sound fine. Go ahead.
To,
Oh, wait, you know what? We are hearing an echo. Go ahead. City Clerk.
John, there is a little bit of an echo. Are you watching the meeting virtually as well? If so, if you could just mute your speakers, that should fix it.
3 things. The altercation by the police against a resident of the canal who happened to be Latino. The progress on the altercation, the progress
John?
on the
John, can you hear me okay?
Del Canal. And finally, what's happening with 400 Canal? Do you hear any of that?
No, we heard about 400 Canal, but you can either try calling back in or you can also email the city clerk.
You can, and I just muted you. So when you're ready to speak, if you could turn the speaker volume down on any other device that you're listening to the meeting through, that should fix that problem. And I'll come back to you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Linda Lang, and I'm a 22-year resident of Terra Linda. As my neighbors and I are beginning to learn more and more about the residential developments planned for Northgate, I wanted to get some information. I don't know if this is the appropriate forum or if there's a planning committee that would be more appropriate to make this request of. You know, we're all concerned about travel, transportation, freeway, what this is going to do to the traffic in Terra Linda. But more importantly for me, I do not know if there is any discussion about long-term water plans and water management. Adding, 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 residential units in the area, I assume some with 1 and 2 bathrooms each. I want to know, with our water conservation and not relying on wishful thinking for the climate to change back in a more positive direction, what is the plan for water management as we think about adding all of these units? This isn't a NIMBY comment. I know there's a need for residential housing in Marin County, but there's also, we're talking about survival in terms of water, and I'd like to know what the council is doing and what the planning commission is doing around this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And this project is working its way through the public process. So what I suggest you do is go to the website, www.cityofsanrafael.org. In the search bar, put in the term Northgate, and up will show, and what will come up will be the planners, and you can email them directly. And if you can't get to them, you can always email the city clerk and she can direct you to them. But that has all the information, the timeline, and the public process is just starting. So your input is definitely welcomed and very appropriate right now. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Rose de Guzman. I'm the granddaughter of Richard and Mary O'Brien, who the Citizen of the Year Award is named after. And I was very shocked and dismayed when I heard that there's consideration of changing the name of the award that our dear friend set up in memory of my grandfather, and later adding my grandmother to that award. Because the word citizen has a very strong meaning, and it's by no means an offensive one. And when my husband, who was born in the Philippines, became a citizen after our marriage, in 2013, he was going to be sworn in as a citizen, and it was in Anaheim here in Southern California. So my grandmother wasn't able to attend, but she very much wanted to. And she shared with me what a blessing it was when she was a child to see her mother become a citizen and what citizenship means and meant to her. And I later saw my children become American citizens. And, regardless, citizenship, actual legal citizenship has never been a requirement for this award. But the values of citizenship, in being a positive member of the community who helps and serves others, and all of the things that, we were taught in school as citizenship skills. We had a different skill every week that they would talk about. I think taking that meaning out of the award would be doing a disservice to the recipients and to the community at large. Thank you very much, Council and Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Rose. And as I indicated, we will pull that item from the consent calendar so we can discuss that further at that time as well. Any other, did John get back on? Okay.
But there is another hand raised.
Okay.
Hello. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, we do.
John Reynolds?
Yes. Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I live in the canal. I'm concerned about 3 things, and they're not on the agenda, I don't believe, tonight, but one, of course, is an update on the altercation of the police against a resident of the canal who happened to be Latino. That you probably are going to continue to give in updates on that. The other thing is how Las Mujeres del Canal plus Canal Community Alliance, the plan that they have going. I know the lights were fixed. They've done some paving down here recently. I know that. That's great. But I'd like to get an update on the canal plan from the Las Mujeres and the Canal Community Alliance going forward. But maybe that is done by checking with the city manager or whatever to know what the updates. And I'm going to be leaving in November, so I'm just trying to get updates on those things. You might give me a way of doing that. The other one is about 400 Canal being sold to another another organization, LLT or LL, what is it? A corporation, I don't know, and displacing of people from 400 Canal. Hopefully that's not happening. I've seen there's a chute sending trash down from the top down there, chairs and stuff like that. I see that. So something's happening. It'll be update on that. We need to be concerned about people not being displaced from 400 Canal. So those are three things that I raised with you, and maybe I need to check with the city manager or other people in the city to be updated on those things. But thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And I'll say on your first item on the police incident, we have a very robust city website. And again, you can find any updates and timelines are there. In terms of the other issues, I'm going to ask Councilmember Micah to say when she's having her community conversation. I can't remember the date and time. So those are each of the district council members as well as myself have community conversations that have no set agendas, and there'll be updates on that. Could you let him know when that is?
Sure. So the community conversations in the District 1, which includes the canal, is going to be on November 14th. So I'm really sorry that he is going to be out of town, I think. But we will be also having two different events around policing in the canal. So the first one is going to be on October 24th. And the second one on November 3rd. They're both like hybrid meetings. The first one on October 24th will be at Alboro Community Center, and it will be in Spanish with English translation. The second one on November 3rd will be in English with a Spanish translation, also at Alboro.
Thank you. Any other virtual hands?
I see no other hands raised, and I'll give everyone a couple of seconds. I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I will close the public comment and bring it back to the council for the city manager and council member report. City Manager Schutz.
Thank you, Mayor Kate and City Council. I was a little bit scooped on what I was going to say based on that last caller and the information that you all just gave out. I had planned on covering that in addition to the Mayor Kate mentioned a lot of the community events that are coming up in the next month or two. I was going to briefly mention the district community conversations, which Councilmember Lorenz Galati said hers, and I thought the other council members may bring theirs up during councilmember reports as well. But as the mayor said, those are opportunities with kind of no set agenda. Anyone can show up to those. You don't have to go to your own district. You can go to a different district. And then we have the one also that's citywide. So those are from October 22nd to November 14th. And I thought they probably would show up under the councilmember reports. And then under the policing in San Rafael, the council member listed the meetings. That is, we're doing a number of things in response to the incident that Mr. Reynolds talked about. And those community meetings are one of the things. We also have ongoing conversations with other groups around related topics. But those meetings that are coming up that were mentioned are good kind of general meetings for the community to participate in if they've got questions about the police department and policy and all of those sorts of things. So I was just going to give those dates, which have now been sent out there, of October 24th from 6 to 8 in Spanish and November 3rd, 6 to 8 in English, both at the Alboro Community Center. And checking with Christine to see if she wants to add anything to that. Okay, so that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll bring it up here on the dais for council member reports, and I will start with the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. I just want to highlight a couple of items. So MIRA, which is Marin Emergency Radio Authority, we had a couple of meetings in the Montmarin San Rafael Park area because the work to put up a new tower on Skyview is becoming more and more current. So we were just bringing the community up to speed on the project, which has been going on for years and years and years. And we wanted to provide an update as far as what the tower is and the importance of it and that it's microwave and not radio frequency. And so we reached out to the whole community around that. And I want to give a shout out of thanks to Pat Kendall from Kaiser, who brought in some of the history and the importance of the work that Mira is doing. So that was really helpful. If anyone wants to have an update about Mira, I suggest looking at their website. They have a lot of information that's posted right now, especially around Skyview, because that's one of the next projects that's coming up fairly frequent currently. I also did a tour of the independent housing units in Petaluma. This is a difference in between congregant living and permanent supportive housing. And so it was good to see a different option that still requires a lot of supports for people, but it does provide independent living. And so this is always something that we want to keep in our toolbox as an opportunity to consider as we continue working through homelessness. I would also like to highlight that I will be having my community conversation this Saturday, probably about 12:30-ish. It will be following the Arbor Park art unveiling. That will be at 11 o'clock, and mine will be at Ounces Outdoors, which is at Northgate Mall, and everyone's welcome to attend that.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. I had two events that I attended. You already mentioned one of them, which was the past Friday on October 14th. I got to tour the downtown San Rafael Arts District with other state legislators in consideration of a funding that will be considered. And as Mayor Kate said, I thought we showed our city off very well. So hopefully that is forthcoming. And then just the day before, on Thursday, October 13th, I attended the canal dredging kickoff, joined by Congressman Huffman, other council members, along with the Army Corps of Engineers, Future Group, and other stakeholders that were there. This is great for our community. It's a long time coming. Thank you to the congressman for sponsoring and making this happen, among other groups along the canal and in the city. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bushy.
Thank you. I'm going to follow right along on the dredge kickoff. It was a wonderful meeting, and I was the only one that was able to go out in the boats to the actual dredge and see it working. It was very exciting. They used GPS technology on all the different parts, and so they are watching everything as it moves, and they have a constant depth monitoring. I saw all the charts and everything. It was great, and it was wonderful to be there with several representatives of the marinas in District 3 who have been wanting this and needing this for a long time. When we went out on the boats, it was high tide, but low tide, it's a completely different situation out there. So very grateful to the congressman for the funding and very much looking forward to the improvements to the San Rafael Canal from that dredging project. I also attended the San Rafael Library Foundation board meeting. I attended the Central Marin Sanitation Agency board meeting. I also had a meeting with regarding recycled water with a representative from the Las Colinas Water District Board. District 3's community meeting occurred last week, and I'd like to thank the mayor for attending in my place for that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scolari.
Yes, thank you. I attended, actually was interviewed with Fernando, I need my glasses, Barreto, the 8th Supervisor Dennis Rodoni, in Cuerpo, Corazón, and Comunidad. Cuerpo, Corazón, y Comunidad. Sorry, I need to sing it. Which means body, heart, and community. This is like a great radio station that happens every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. For the Spanish-speaking community. So we were interviewed about government, local government, the difference between the county and the city, and also our elections and registering to vote on November 8th. Also participated in community conversations with Supervisor Dennis Rodoni. It was his community conversations. And with Mayor Kate, she chairs the Economic Development Subcommittee, which is always one of my favorite meetings as well. It's amazing what our business community is doing in our town. and also the canal dredging kickoff. I'm really thankful and really excited about being able to have our public responders to be able to, if there is an emergency in the canal, to be able to access that. And again, our community conversations in District 1 is on November 14th. And I wanted to mention November 5th is our Dia de los Muertos in the canal. So I know it's in November, but just like save the date for that one. So thank you.
Thank you. I know you're all feeling badly that you were not at the dredging kickoff because it was really fun. I was also glad that we were there. And City Manager Schutz was there. And again, another shout out to Congressman Huffman. Getting that program on the Army Corps work plan was a feat. And he did that and came through for our community. So that was a great event. And then I was able to attend the Walk and Roll, so cleverly named by Safe Routes to School and the Transportation Authority of Marin. And it's a program to get kids walking or rolling to school. And I got to stand out in front of Sun Valley. I even had a handmade name tag that I'm never going to throw away because it is the sweetest thing. So as always, thank you to my colleagues who are out there meeting with the community and doing great things. Oh, the Mayor Kate community conversation is November 3rd. It's in person outside 5:30 at the Terra Linda Community Center. All of these are on the website that I keep touting. So with that, we will accept public comment on any of the reports that you just heard. If there's anyone in the chambers who would like to comment. Not seeing anyone. If there's anyone virtually who'd like to comment on the council member or city manager report.
I do see a hand raised.
This is Ava Crisanti. I'd like to point out that we just heard a round of civic boosterism. I mean, this is really city government as an extension of the Chamber of Commerce. But it is really galling and it is very typical of this majority white city council and the girl boss, white feminists who rule it, that they have not acknowledged that the city was admonished in the venerated New Yorker magazine. That column is a really serious column. And the condemnation of the city, though it's white gloved, is really important. And it is very much like the County of Marin in its provincialism and its anti-intellectualism to try to pretend that it simply didn't happen. And I think that's generally what Kate Collins is trying to get away with, is to pretend that she didn't engineer that camp with Senator Mike McGuire and Damon Connolly. The problem is she did, and that's what the CPRA documentation shows that I received. It's been an ongoing complaint from me, and sadly from me alone. The meritresses over at Marin Organizing Committee, I know Johnson Reynolds or Reynolds Johnson, whatever his name is, noting that the man who was beaten, quote, happened to be Latino, unquote. He said that twice. Let me point out the reason he was beaten is that he is Latino. But I also want to point out that Johnson Reynolds never once raised any concerns about the 65-year-old woman who died at the internment camp run by your police. In fact, he praised your police after she died. That's unethical.
So for those who might be new to a meeting, we accept all open comment during public open time. And we hope that people keep to the topic on hand and not necessarily negatively address other people who are commenting, because we want to hear from everybody.
I see no other hands raised. I'm going to give everyone just a couple seconds. I see no further public comment.
Thank you. We'll close that item. And I want to thank Pablo for the interpretation as he was interpreting through this agenda item. So thank you, Pablo. Next item is a consent calendar, and we will pull item 4C because we received public comment on that. So I will have, when we get to the appropriate time, have the city attorney or the assistant city attorney speak to that item. Any other items to be held from the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Are there any comments from the public on any of the items on the consent calendar? Even though we're polling C, but we would accept comment on all items 4A through H. Is that right? Yes. Anyone in the chambers like to address on any of the items on the consent calendar? Through I? Oh, that I, I'm sorry. I don't see anyone in the chambers. Are there anyone online?
I see no hands raised, and I'll give everyone a couple seconds. I do see a hand.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ava.
This is Ava Crisanti. I'd like to point out that you have something, a fire ordinance, and this was an issue that came up many times with the residents of the SSA, that there had never been a fire safety inspection of the site. In fact, they had requested many times, and I even have this on body cam. They requested to have fire extinguishers because there were multiple fires that broke out. Because people were being kept in such abject conditions. They were freezing all winter. And some people were trying to light small fires to stay warm. What you had set up was a bunch of tents with barely any platforms. And the whole claim that there were platforms for the tents is belied by the correspondence derived from the CPRAs I ran. I want to point out that this issue should have been addressed immediately. And in fact, Susan Yoder would not have died on December 9th, 2021 in that camp if you had simply heeded earlier concerns about the very poor conditions, the lack of any sanitation, the lack of any electricity, the fact that elderly, medically vulnerable people were being kept in these flimsy tents underneath a downspout from the freeway. They were soaking wet during the rains. There were rats. There was fetid water, as the New Yorker magazine points out. These conditions led to her death. And in fact, if you had ever addressed the criminality of your police department and the sadistic treatment of your unhoused population, Bridget Tusher would probably still be alive today. And yet your police department even lied about her death. So there
full support of changing the name from an inclusion standpoint. We are trying to look at doing things differently sometimes, and that is a hard thing. And I just want you to know I recognize that your family won't be happy with it. And I hope that you'll continue to participate in the community designation as we select individuals, because we have some people doing amazing work in our community. And it is one way, the only way that the city is able to honor and give them an award. So unless there's further comments. Is that fine? Oh, let me check the city attorney.
Sure, you're welcome to take public comment before the vote. I think you already had
I
comment at
did,
the,
but go ahead.
consent
We'll go
agenda,
ahead
but
and
you're welcome to invite further comment, Mayor Kate.
sure, we'll go ahead because your family's been a longtime member. So go ahead.
When this was originally brought up years ago, I told my mother about it, and her direct quote was, "What a crock." Also, if you look at the minutes from the original city council meeting in 2001, Mike Mahoney stated that he wanted it to be Citizen of the Year. He did not state that he wanted it to be Public Service Award. So you're going against my mother's wishes, you're going against Mike's wishes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to comment? With that, I will close the public comment. If the assistant city attorney could respond to the legality of the city changing the name.
Mayor Kate, I apologize. We do have members of the public on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. This is Ava Crisanti. I had to email Lindsay Lara in the middle of your discussion about this because people on Zoom could not hear what you were saying. And in that sense, I believe that it would be a violation of the Brown Act for you to proceed on this item without postponing it. I mean, I think if people can't hear, therefore they didn't know that they would have an opportunity to comment. And it is, you know, I understand that you guys have many technical issues. It's also clear to me from the correspondence I've seen you share internally that I only was able to see through the California Public Records Act. This is a really corrupt city council. If it wants to do something, it will do something regardless of whether it is right, whether it is appropriate. It will do things in the name of political correctness while trampling all over the rights of Black and Latino and poor white people. And in fact, that is how Bridget Tusher was killed. That is how Susan Yoder was killed. Who knows how many other people died because of your policies. I would advise you, since the public was not able to hear, and it appears to me that you did not even acknowledge that you had us cut off for, I think, as much as 5 minutes. And that in itself is inappropriate. So what I would advise you to do is just table this until the next meeting, because I do think that there would be concerns about the Brown Act. I'd also like to point out, and I don't know if you covered it in the last meeting, but the departure of the city manager is very interesting timing. I believe, if it was mentioned at the last city council meeting, it would have been the day before the New
Anyone else would like to comment on item 4C?
Mayor Kate, I do have one other hand raised, and I did just check my inbox. It was muted. It looks like I did receive emails from 4 members of the public indicating that it was muted as well. I'm happy to take public comment on the final hand and then reintroduce the topic for the evening, and I'll remember the questions. And if I miss one of the questions that was asked, I'll incorporate that in my presentation.
Okay, well, I'll turn to the city attorney regarding procedurally, I mean, being that we had the staff report and then we had the clarifying conversation.
I would agree with the city clerk that if she's confirmed that there were members of the public who were attending the meeting but were unable to hear the report, we should simply repeat it.
Okay.
And re-report, if you will. And I'm unclear as to whether members of the public, also did not hear comment from the chamber. How much of the meeting are you aware was not heard?
They only lost us after Genevieve. So Genevieve and myself, Genevieve did pass it over to me, and then that was muted until the conclusion of my presentation.
Okay, so I would suggest repeating that part. And then when was the public able to hear again? Did they hear Mr. O'Brien's last comments?
I'm not sure, but I will find out soon.
Okay.
Well,
and then-
if he's interested, he can make them again. And I'm
Yeah,
curious, can people
precisely.
read it? Does the closed captioning also appear on screens? I'm just curious.
It does present on YouTube as well,
Okay.
if they're watching on YouTube or if they're on Zoom.
Okay. No, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just add well, I have nothing further to add at this time. Why don't we just go with this procedure? We're still learning how to do these hybrid meetings. This is a problem that hasn't arisen before, but I think at this juncture, the repetition of what Lindsay said before is
Yeah.
the best way to go.
Yeah, no, and I apologize for all because it's uncomfortable to have to go back and repeat, but we want to make sure that everyone can hear it. And this is part of the benefit of being hybrid. Some city councils have actually opted not to be hybrid for this very reason. They only are in person, but we believe strongly in having these options, even with their uncomfortable, awkward moments. Okay, so with that, I will turn to you and you will give your report again.
Thank you. I'm Lindsay Lara, the city clerk for the city of Center Fell. I also did get clarification that Rick's comments were heard on Zoom and on YouTube. It just missed my presentation. So this evening on the consent calendar, we're discussing renaming the Citizen of the Year designation. It's been the Citizen of the Year award has been designated that since 2001 when Michael Mahoney created the award to honor Rick O'Brien and later included Mary O'Brien to be included in the award. In 2001, there were options that were presented to the city council to choose a name for the award. It was either the Citizen of the Year award or the Public Service award. And ultimately, the city council did select the Citizen of the Year award. Every year, the selection committee meets early January to select the recipient of the Citizen of the Year award, and the members of the public, the community, is the one who's nominating. With this fund, the fund name wouldn't be able to change. That was Michael Mahoney. Mr. Mahoney has passed away since, so we would not be able to change the name of the fund. However, the way that we recruit nominations for the award we can change. So we would be recommending to name it Public Service Award, which would honor Mr. Mahoney's original recommendations to City Council back in 2001. The way that we recruit online and through Nextdoor, social media, IJ, everywhere that we do our recruitments, that would be, if approved this evening, would be the Public Service Award of the Year, which is also recognized at the State of the City dinner, and they do receive a payment as well. There was a question while I was muted about what other names were considered, and we did reach out to Rick O'Brien so that he would reach out to his family to come up with any of the names that they would be comfortable with. They were currently opposed to changing the name at all, and that was the response, is that they wanted the name to remain as it was. So we ultimately fell back to Mr. Mahoney's original recommendations. Councilmember Kurtz asked a question around who was in support or who was in opposition. What was the general feeling of the selection committee? The general feeling was in support of changing the name to have a name that was more inclusive of our community. And staff's recommendation this evening would be to designate the name to Public Service Award, while the fund name would remain the same.
Thank you. I think you're almost word for word. That was amazing.
I got lucky. Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien, even though your comments were heard, do you want to give them again? Okay, thank you. So with that, we will open it up for folks that were listening virtually who didn't get to comment on this item and hear your report.
And I do have a few hands raised.
Hello, Jonathan Freeman here. We got cut off, just for information, the last time that was that Eve Chrysanth got cut off. So interesting timing there. And I did manage to catch Mayor Kate lip reading. So I got a little bit, but the end of her statement was quite right on, and I really believe that the sensitivity that the council is demonstrating in this effort to remove the word citizen, which does restrict to people who are the awards of people who are citizens, supposedly. But it does mean something. Words mean something. And to take the onus of that word off of the award, I think is a really good idea, and I'm quite in support of that.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. This is Rose de Guzman again. I think, looking at my grandfather as well and what he valued, and he served his country in the Air Force. He served the state of California in the Highway Patrol, and he served the city of San Rafael as a planning commissioner for years. And he was never someone to exclude people, but citizenship and the values that includes were very important to him and very important in what he instilled in his three sons, in my cousin whom he raised, and in the rest of us grandchildren who were with him every Sunday for dinner. And so, it's something that to me doesn't make sense to treat the word citizen as offensive and as a negative comment, as a negative concept, and then call this award the Richard P. and Mary Ferrario O'Brien something award. What? No, that doesn't make any sense. And there's never been in the criteria for the award, which I read when it came into being in 2001, and I've reread again more recently, there's never been a line item or even a mention that the person must be a citizen of the United States in the legal concept of that, only that they have to exhibit citizenship values, which is something different than what country is printed on the front of your passport. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose.
Ava, we're ready for your comments.
May I? I thought that it is like a in every agenda item.
So anyone who spoke, who provided public comment on my last round, they were unable to hear my report. So they would be providing comment technically the first time on my report.
Thank you.
May I speak now?
Yes.
I just want to point out that, on both sides of this discussion, there's a serious disconnect. The descendants of this person who was on the Planning Commission, who was in the Air Force, and who was in the California Highway Patrol, has just stated that he never excluded anyone. But those three entities, their purpose was to exclude. Their purpose, there are serial issues of racial discrimination in each one of those entities. And in fact, the Planning Commission in particular in San Rafael was hideous. And it engineered the kind of segregation that you see right now. I wonder if it's appropriate to have this award at all. People don't look at history. People don't even look at what's happening today in their own city. Here we have a city council that is doing everything it can to make these cosmetic changes. We're going to change it from citizen to public service. It makes no difference whatsoever. The descendants can't get their heads around the fact that, their forebear wasn't exactly what he said he was, or how they choose to remember him. Doesn't mean you can't love, your grandfather, your great grandfather, or whatever. It just means that there are questions about how San Rafael came to be the most racially segregated city in the most racially segregated county in the state of California. And yes, the Planning Commission had a little something to do with that. But in general, the political correctness of changing the name of the award and the uproar over it just seems designed to produce squat.
there any additional? Okay.
Yeah, this is John Reynolds again. I appreciate that. I didn't know this was in the consent calendar, but yeah, I don't know. I think award is important, and the original name of it is long. Maybe you shorten the name. But I agree with that public service award is more appropriate to be inclusive. Citizen has taken on a connotation that focuses on citizen and non-citizen. It's taken on that connotation in our time. So a award, if you're going to give it, should be a more inclusive. And you could say Public Servant of the Year award, maybe something like that, because it'd be of the year. So that's what I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
I see no further hands raised. I'll give everyone a couple seconds. You're only allowed to speak one time for this round of public comments. So I see no more further
Thank
public
you.
comment.
I will close the public comment on this item, and unless there are additional comments or you have to make a comment? Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Micah.
Well, I will start by really appreciating the O'Brien family, not only for this award and for all the public service throughout the years and all the contributions, but also for actually being here tonight. The way I see citizen to me is more like a clarifying word, as we don't look at people that they are citizens for this type of award. And I feel that it makes it easier, you know, when we are thinking about nominating people, that you don't have to be a citizen in order to be recognized. I totally recognize the being proud of being a citizen. I became one in 2008. It took me how many years? 12 years to become a citizen. We have amazing people in our community doing great work that they get nominated without that. So I again, huge appreciation to the O'Briens. I'm not thinking that they were not inclusive when they were thinking about citizen, but I'm thinking nowadays it just makes it easier if if we just call it public service. So I'm happy to make a motion when we are ready, if we are ready. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional comments? Councilmember Bushy, go ahead.
I served with Dick O'Brien on the Planning Commission. I remember him well. He was colorful, and we had interesting discussions. I'm deeply troubled by the disagreement in our broader community over this issue. This is a wonderful way to honor him and your mother, and is a big deal for people to receive this award, and to get hung up on over a word troubles me. That word has negative connotations in the taken in the wrong context. And it's also not correct. You can't be a citizen of San Rafael. You're a citizen of the United States, not of San Rafael. So in a way, it sort of doesn't make sense. And we have no proof that everyone we've awarded this to has been a citizen, even of the United States. So it's not a logical word that necessarily should be there. It's been there sort of out of just a historical fact. My thought would be, though, to find a different word that would capture the broader meaning. I was thinking of Community Member of the Year award, because that's accurate. It's someone who's a member of our community and has contributed to our community. The terminology Public Service Award, it doesn't necessarily even suggest that it's a person that could get it. So I don't like the situation that we are in. If there is any hope of finding a common ground with a different phraseology, I would be willing to participate in any discussions with interested parties to work collaboratively towards something that meets all of our needs.
Thank you. And actually, that phrase was suggested and discussed. And so that's why we are leaning on the original two names that were presented at the 2001 meeting when it was awarded, when it was discussed. So,
And there's absolutely no hope for any negotiations for common ground.
we've had the discussion with the O'Brien family. So this is why the staff is presenting what they are this evening.
Mayor, could you please clarify when you were having the conversations from the elected officials, who was included on those conversations with the O'Brien family?
Well, whoever was on the council in 2001.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not exactly sure. I think Al Boro was mayor, but I don't know, it might have been Larry Mulryan, but I don't know. But they're not anyone who's on the council today. Okay, additional comments?
I agree with Councilmember Bushy that, I mean, we should be celebrating. And this was such a gift your family has given to the city. And it's really upsetting to see us fighting over the word and the phrasing versus the celebrating the intent of what I think your family is really given. And I do agree that we do need to change from citizen to something. And if our best recommendation from the staff right now is public service, then I think we need to go with that. I would, if the O'Brien family would be willing to rediscuss at some point in time, I think we should be open to that, because it's hard to think about going forward with this, with having the gifters, the giving, the family giving, not okay with how this is moving forward. So I would like to see us see if there is a middle ground that we can work on. But I do understand that we do need to change the name.
Thank you, Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, I concur with the vice mayor's comments. I wish to make sure that we can simultaneously honor the O'Briens and what this meant to the family, but also be able to move forward with where we are in 2022 with what it means, the word means to our community today. So I do hope that we can re-engage, but I think we should tonight proceed with the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just summarize. I appreciate all the comments from my colleagues, and I share their appreciation of the O'Briens. As I stated earlier, not sure what got recorded, what people heard or didn't hear, but everyone in the chambers had heard me say how grateful I am. And that to me, the focus is really on the word award. And we've had many tough conversations around this topic. This is new to the council, but not new. The city clerk has engaged deeply with the O'Brien family, and we are very clear that you are not happy with the way this is going forward and your deep desire to keep the name as it is. And when we look at this item, we have to weigh it and look at it in terms of our entire community. And the honor remains with your parents. Their names will always be a part of the award, and their great works will be known going forward. And we feel strongly that the name, the word citizen, which is different than it was in 2001, has different connotations. And in terms of the inclusion work that we're doing, and that is the reality. And we could get a whole side conversation whether we agree that whether that should be a word that is inclusive or not. But this council, as what I'm hearing, and our community, we've heard loud and clear that that word can be seen as not inclusive. And that is the last thing that we want to have associated with this tremendous honor that we'll be able to ensure. So I hope that Mr. O'Brien will continue to participate in the committee. He always has valuable insights, and we get to see great people. In fact, I think I see one of the people who, oh no, he got Citizen of the Year. Yeah, you got Citizen of the Year behind you, Mr. Kearney. Oh, and Ms. Garbarino. So this conversation is probably resonating on a whole different level. I'm sorry the public comments closed, because we'd love to hear your input too, but I think we've heard from the community and we've heard from the council. And I know Councilmember Micah has said that she would make a motion on this item.
So I'll make a motion to approve. Should I read the whole thing or yes?
I would just say you adopt the resolution.
To adopt the resolution for the.
That's fine. Thank you.
To adopt, yeah, because.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bushy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kurtz,
Aye.
Councilmember Yeren's Galati,
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that item carries 5-0. The next item is a special presentation, switching gears. It is the proclamation supporting the 2022 Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill. I will read a portion of it, and I know that Richard Diaz will be the one who will be making comments. Chief White, did you want to come down? Do you want me to read it? Tell me how you'd like this to go.
Actually, it'd be great if you would read it, but I just wanted to introduce Mr. Diaz to everyone, if that was okay, and I can wait until after you've
Yeah.
read it, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
no, and Norm, sometimes we come, do you want us to come down or? We can come on down because he's here. I'm sorry, I have to put my shoes on. Yeah, we'll come on down, you know? Welcome. We'll have the whole, we'll kind of line up. Tonight's meeting, we have everything going on in tonight's meeting. So I'm glad that you're all here. So I'm going to read the majority of the proclamation, but not all of it. Okay. So it's the 2022 Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill, whereas San Rafael is committed to ensuring the safety of our residents, visitors, and employees. Whereas when an earthquake begins, everyone should know this, the immediate action of individuals is to drop, cover, and hold, and it can protect them from great bodily harm. We're not going to act that out tonight, but everyone should know to do that. Whereas the city of San Rafael, in partnership with community organizations and the Marin VOAD, can you just say what that acronym is? Because we don't like acronyms here.
Voluntary organizations active in disasters.
Okay. With them, we'll provide a variety of trainings, resources, and outreach to encourage residents and staff to participate in the Great Shakeout and to take steps to be better prepared for earthquakes and all emergencies. Whereas the city of San Rafael will join over 15 million participants in the world, earthquakes are everywhere, in practicing the basic steps to drop, cover, and hold on, mark your calendars, October 20th, 2022 at 10:20. So 10:20, 10:20. And whereas the time, energy, and effort residents, business owners, and San Rafael employees invest in preparing now will create more resilient communities that can better survive and recover from earthquake, because we certainly are all in it together and can't just depend only on the fire department. So therefore, I, Kate Collin, Mayor of San Rafael, along with my colleagues, do proclaim San Rafael's support of and participation in the Great California Shakeout Drill on October 20th, 2022 at 10:20. So with that, I would love to turn this over to you. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Turn around.
Mayor Kate.
It's kind of awkward. We'll just go in an arc. How about
Can I
that?
just
There you go.
stand
There you
here? Well, thank you, Mayor Kate. Richard Diaz, you community disaster coordinator for the city of San Rafael, recently hired. So I'd like to simply just say thank you on behalf of Fire Department, OES, Office of Emergency Services. This proclamation actually proves support for our continued promotion of disaster preparedness. Not only preparedness, but community awareness of earthquake safety. As the proclamation clearly says, this Thursday, October 20th at 10:20, we really encourage the residents to drop, cover, and hold on. It's simple words, but can clearly save your lives. The city of San Rafael has participated in this. This is an international campaign, talking about millions of people, not just the US, taking part in this drill. So the city of San Rafael has participated in this since 2009 consecutively. So we are looking forward to continued participation. And lastly, internally, we're also taking this opportunity to test our internal emergency notification systems. So our staff, we will test and see how quickly we can get a hold of relevant staff and just coordinate as planned. So this is what this drill has a twofold for us from emergency services position. So again, thank you. And with your permission and with Pablo's permission, I'd like to also reiterate this directly in Spanish. OES is adapting to community needs. So Richard Díaz, soy coordinador comunitario de servicios de emergencias de la ciudad de San Rafael. Así que para nosotros es un gusto aceptar la proclamación para el gran shakeout. Esto comprueba nuevamente el compromiso que tiene la ciudad para proteger a los residentes y la comunidad en general. Como estipula la proclamación, esto va a ser viendo este próximo jueves 20 de octubre, todos vamos a agacharnos, a agarrarnos bien y a sostenernos. Estos son tres protocolos, tres pasos bastante sencillos, pero salvan las vidas. Así que internamente vamos nosotros a utilizar este día, aprovecharlo para también poner a práctica nuestro sistema de notificación de emergencias. Y esto es simplemente para estar seguros de que en el momento de una emergencia podemos coordinar como planeamos. Así que nuevamente muchas gracias. Thank you again, Mayor Kate. And I encourage everyone to please partake. It's very easy. Shakeout.org or readymarin.org and drop, cover, and hold. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I see there's a photo opportunity happening. So here, since we're all here, you grab this. Chief, come on. Come on. We didn't get to do this for 2 years. So, you know, please indulge us as we get to have pictures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Yes. And people should take pictures and post on their social media and hashtag San Rafael Fire Department. There we go. Okay. Thank you. I know our friends at Golden Gate can't wait. We're almost to your agenda item. Your patience is amazing. We do accept public comment on the items on our agenda. So if there's anyone in the chambers who'd like to give public comment on the presentation of the Great Shakeout, October 20th. Not seeing anyone in the chambers. Is there anyone virtually who'd like to comment on the Great Shakeout?
I do see a hand raised.
This is Ava Crisanti. I have to ask the obvious question. If the city is so concerned about earthquake safety, why were they interning a majority Black and Latino, medically vulnerable population for over a year underneath a freeway overpass on 5th Street? I mean, underneath the 101. It was deafeningly loud in that camp. I believe the conditions led to the death of Ms. Yoder on December 9th, 2021. It's clear from the correspondence I CPRA'd that the camp did not even have basic emergency medical equipment. There was some sort of scramble between police and fire dispatch for police and fire looking for an AED device. It is unclear to me why there was no AED device on site that might have made a difference in the life of Ms. Yoder, saving her life. I want to point out that there are a lot of discrepancies in interviews with her surviving friends, and in fact, even one of her family members, which seem to contradict the conclusion drawn by the police. And there seems to be a pattern. Well, I don't think there seems to be a pattern. There is a pattern of lying with the city, with people in positions of authority, whether it's the nearly all-white city council, whether it's the abusive police department, whether it's the many NPOs that work with the city of San Rafael and receive money and act as conduits between the county and the city. And in that way, erase many of the issues that need to be investigated. For example,
I see no other hands raised. I'll give everyone a couple seconds. I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment and thank you, Richard. Welcome to the organization, and we look forward to you helping our community prepare. Thank you so much. So finally, the next agenda item is a Transit Center Relocation Draft Environmental Impact Report update. We are grateful that I see our friends from the Golden Gate Bridge District are here. And I also see Director Judici and I see Director Miller here. And I know we'll have a robust conversation about this item, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to say. I wanted just to, you may remember that about a year ago, we delivered a list of comments to the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District regarding the draft EIR on the Santa Fe Transit Relocation Project. Since that time, the district has been in contact with us. We've been meeting regularly. We've been working on responding to their questions. They've asked for clarifications and some guidance on what our standards and regulations are. And it's been kind of a, very collaborative effort. We have been working, and what we've heard so far, we haven't received written comments. What we've heard so far is that they are proposing to respond to the questions and be responsive to the questions that we provided in the list of comments that we provided in a year ago. That said, we haven't received formal written comments, so we don't have the ability to provide you with a analysis that we can share with you. However, we know that we are expecting to see a final EIR released here soon. Typically, the EIR or the final EIR process is a 10-day review period. The district has agreed to allow us a 30-day review period, and that'll give us an opportunity to review the document and provide you, your council with an update at a future city council hearing. So unless what looks like we have some district member here now. So I'll go ahead and pass it to the district to begin their presentation.
Thank you, Director Judici.
Briefly, Mayor Kate, council members, city staff, members of the public, my name is Dennis Mulligan. I'm the general manager for the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District. Thank you for having us here tonight. I want to give a shout out to city staff. It's been ongoing collaboration since we last came before the council. So I just want to recognize and thank them for all their efforts working with us as we move this project to fruition. And with that, I'll be brief and I'll turn it over to Adam. Adam and Shilpa will be walking through the presentation tonight. And once again, just thank you to city staff for all the great work.
Thank you, Director.
All right. Thank you, members of the council. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Adam Dankberg with Kimley Horn. I'm the project manager for the consultant team retained by the district for this project. Next to me is
I'm Shilpa Trisal with ICF, environmental consultants to the district.
Thank you. And so it's been a while since we've been, especially in front of the council in person. And so exciting to be here and talking about this project. I'll do a quick overview at the start because it has been so long since many of you have heard about the project. We'll talk about some of the city's comments and some of our responses to that. And then we'll talk about next steps of where we go from here. So with a little bit of background, this project has been ongoing for quite some time, and there's been a lot of collaboration between the city and the transit agencies over that period. Started with the downtown station area plan in 2010. It's notable that station area plan identified the area around the smart station for a relocation for the transit center. Then in 2015, the city led a relocation study that I had the opportunity to be a part of, where we looked at facility requirements, how many bus bays were needed. We did some identification of potential transit center locations, and that study wrapped up in 2017. And then since 2018, the district took over the project, and we've been in the environmental process. Right at the outset, the initial thought was to let's keep going with the initial alternatives in the relocation study. But that relocation study didn't include any public engagement. And so as we started the public engagement process, we heard loud and clear from the community, let's start with a clean slate. Let's start over. Let's make sure we're getting this right. And so that's what we did. And so we've had a lot of engagement with not only city staff, but the other transit agencies along the way. As we started with this full universe of potential solutions, we were talking about goals and needs and then solutions, and started to narrow those down to the specific alternatives that include in the EIR. Over that time period, we've had quite a bit of community engagement, which we're really proud of. As noted on the slide here, over 7,000 total in-person and virtual interactions, a bunch of surveys, a lot of community meetings. We've had really enjoyed the partnership with the Canal Alliance. We've done some meetings in Spanish with their support, and that's been really effective at trying to reach the broad cross-section of the community. We've also presented to a number of community groups just to make sure that we're hearing from as many folks as possible, and that input has really influenced with the recommendations of the study. So we released a draft EIR last year. We had virtual public meetings in September of last year to receive comments. We also received a number of written comments on the EIR, including from state, regional, local agencies, local groups, as well as members of the public. There is a variety of topics covered in those public comments, including some of the ones mentioned on the screen, safety, cultural resources. But what we found a common thread across those comments was there was general support for the Santa Fe Trans Center project, and specifically the preferred alternative, the move whistle stop alternative. And so that was present in many of the letters. Just a brief cross-section of some of the letters, including from Transportation Authority of Marin, League of Women Voters, and an individual member from the public, just to give some of the context of some of the feedback that we've heard. And the comments received and the responses will be included in the final EIR that we're getting close to releasing. So the draft EIR was released in August 2021. Initially, we had a 60-day review period. We extended that to allow for additional comments from public agencies, and then closed the comment period in November 2021. So since that time, we heard loud and clear the need to emphasize collaboration and work with city staff regarding city comments. So we've held a number of meetings. I think this number is higher now since we put together this PowerPoint a few weeks ago. But we've held a number of meetings with community development, public works staff to go through all the comments and responses. And we've covered a lot of topics in those meetings. So I think it's been a very productive year. I think everybody, as we were talking recently with city staff, everybody's agreement that really that collaboration has led to an improved document that we're all really proud of. Also, we are aware of the city's interest in seeing the written responses. Normally, the FEIR would allow for a 10-day period prior to the board taking up the item. We'll extend that to 30 days to make sure the city staff has ample time to review the responses that will be issued with the final EIR. So tonight, I'll be covering a few of the city comments. We were aware there's quite a number of comments that the city provided. This is not the comprehensive list, but we identified those that the city really emphasized in the letter and worked with city staff to make sure that these were the right ones to be covering here tonight. If there are other questions on topics not listed here, certainly happy to discuss those as well. So we'll start with transportation, safety, and project description topics. The first one, there's a comment regarding how the analysis used data from prior to the COVID pandemic. And so the data that the simulation modeling was based on was from just prior to the pandemic in 2020. Now, one of the questions was, how the pandemic has affected transit ridership and how that may affect the need for the transit center. And so a few key points on that. So because of distancing requirements, the actual number of bus trips through the transit center actually increased during the pandemic because the operators had to run more buses in order to allow for increased spacing and social distancing on the buses. Ridership was certainly impacted during the pandemic, but it has rebounded significantly. As of May, Marin Transit was 81% of its pre-COVID ridership, and that number continues to increase. And that really just underscores how the Trans Center is a vital lifeline for a number of Santa Fe residents and workers. They rely on that, have relied on that through the pandemic, and are continuing to do so, relying on transit to access jobs and medical facilities and other uses. We're not aware of any reduction in transit service through the Trans Center current or planned in the future. And thus, the pandemic has not changed the size requirements for the Trans Center. So its transit service has increased or stayed steady. And thus, in terms of the number of bays that we need and the overall size of the Trans Center, the effect of the pandemic has not changed that sizing. We also want to note that this is consistent. The use of pre-pandemic data is consistent with the general plan, which is something we strove for all along. This slide just highlights the rebound to pre-COVID ridership amongst transit agencies in the Bay Area. It's noteworthy that Marin Transit, highlighted in the darker color, is leading the way in terms of ridership recovery. Again, emphasizing that Marin Transit is really serving that transit-dependent population that has continued to rely on transit through the pandemic and especially more so today. Golden Gate Transit, while ridership to San Francisco is certainly down, they have seen significant ridership recovery on Marin County area routes, so regional routes on 101. So the ridership levels on those routes is exceeding or at or exceeding 80% of pre-pandemic ridership. We heard recently from Marin Transit, they're actually closer to around 90% right now in terms of ridership recovery, and are certainly on a path to reach pre-COVID levels very soon. So I think that just underscores that transit remains essential to this community, and the need for the transit center and the transit center size that we had planned remains as well. Another significant topic was around safety, a lot of questions around safety. And so based on that feedback, we performed a really detailed safety analysis of existing conditions, as well as the various alternatives, including the no build alternative or doing nothing alternative, since the draft EIR was released. And so this analysis, we have documentation that will be included in the final EIR. And what the analysis found is that the move whistle stop alternative, which is the preferred alternative, is the best performing for safety. And that is especially compared to the existing conditions or the no build alternative. And this is for a few different factors. It's best laid out in the safety analysis, but brief summary is that it includes additional safety elements that would be applied to crosswalks and crossings to make it safer for pedestrians at and around the transit center. It reduces the number of vehicle pedestrian conflicts, actually making 4th Street safer for pedestrians. 3rd and Heatherton is a very problematic intersection. A lot of safety challenges there. By moving the transit center north of 3rd, particularly considering that the main destination for transit riders is downtown Santa Fe. So by moving the transit center north of 3rd, it really reduces the number of people who have to cross 3rd Street, thereby significant safety benefits for those users, which is that next bullet. And then by placing all the transit center uses, the smart station, the buses, all within one block that aren't separated by a public street, it does really minimize vehicle pedestrian conflicts, whereas other alternatives would have a much higher level of vehicle pedestrian conflict, especially the no build, especially associated with that 3rd Street crossing. So for these reasons and some others discussed in the document, we feel that the move whistle stop alternative is the best for improving safety. Another topic that we heard from several community members, actually specifically, was around the proposed pickup drop-off location, which in the draft EIR concept placed that north of 4th Street. There's a lot of concern about the desire to turn Tamalpais Avenue, which is where the pickup drop-off have been placed, into a key north-south bikeway. And there was concern about the conflict between the pickup drop-off activities and that bikeway. And so we were able to find another location to put that pickup drop-off, as shown here on the slide. So in the top image is the draft EIR, highlighted in the yellow box. Actually, let me help orient folks real quick. So to the right is north. To the top of the screen is west, so closer into downtown. So the freeway is just off the screen on the bottom of both of those images. So the previous in the yellow box, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the draft EIR had the pickup drop off on the north side of 4th along Tamalpais. The concern was conflicts with north-south bike movements on Tamalpais. So with the final EIR, we have relocated it on the west side of the customer service building area via a drive aisle accessed from 3rd Street. That has a number of benefits. It puts it closer to the bus uses, so folks don't have to cross 4th Street. And then it also completely avoids that bicycle pickup drop-off conflict. Another topic that we heard from the city is concerns about the right turn movement at 3rd Street and Heatherton. The draft EIR had a concept to add a shared through right lane, basically convert a through lane on Heatherton into a shared through right lane. And there was concerns about having that type of configuration with pedestrian safety, particularly associated with pedestrians crossing 3rd. And so we took those to heart and did a lot of brainstorming and engineering examination to figure out what we can do to address that comment. So on the left is the draft EIR. This is Heatherton running left to right on the screen. Third is running up on the screen. So the existing Citibank is kind of in the area, sort of on the corner there. And so this in the yellow on the left is what was in the draft EIR. You can see there's a shared through and right turn. With a final EIR, it's a fairly simple change on paper of a right turn, but really the key there is we would use signal phasing to completely control the conflict between pedestrians and vehicles. So there would be no time where vehicles and pedestrians would be moving at the same time. So what happens today is vehicle gets a green ball, they start to go, same time pedestrians getting a walk signal and they start to go. And so there's that conflict. And so we would actually use signal phasing so that that doesn't occur at the same time. Vehicles go, first the pedestrians go, then the vehicles go. And we did model that to make sure that we weren't causing any traffic issues with that change. And actually by having this second full-time right turn lane, it provides us more vehicle storage and more throughput when that right turn phase is on. So it actually does benefit traffic operations as well as safety. Next is parking. There was some concerns around parking loss with the preferred alternative, move whistle stop, associated primarily with the loss of the on-street parking on Tamalpais Avenue as we convert that to a bus-only street. In a change since the draft EIR, we would add on-street parking on Tamalpais Avenue south of 3rd Street between 3rd and 2nd. The area adjacent to where the transit center is today, right now it's pickup drop-off zone. So we were able to get 16 new parking stalls in there to really minimize the amount of parking loss associated with this alternative. I want to highlight that parking is not a CEQA impact, but we understand it is a concern and something that we tried to address with the final EIR. And then I believe the final topic on this subsection here is around concerns about queuing near the railroad tracks. And we did a detailed microsimulation analysis where we simulated all the different activities in the downtown area to look at the effects from queuing. And what we found is that the project would not significantly change overall levels of queuing. Essentially what is happening is with the move whistle stop alternative, bus circulation on the street network becomes more efficient, thereby improving traffic operations. And so we don't see any sort of significant queuing effect. And just did want to note that queuing is not a CEQA issue, but again, something that we did investigate. With that, we'll go on to the second tranche of topics and turn it over to Shilpa.
Thank you. As Adam mentioned, we've been working collaboratively with the city over the last 1 year. We thank city staff for being available to answer our questions. And we have revised the draft EIR to include clarifications on the comments that were raised by the city. Soon we will be releasing the final EIR for review, and that will include responses to comments, detailed responses to all the comments raised by all agencies, organizations, and members of the public. And here I'm just raising a few of the key concerns that were raised in the city's letter. The first was that the general plan 2040 was adopted right before the draft EIR was released, and therefore what was included in the draft EIR were draft policies from the 2040 general plan. We did sort of anticipate that the general plan would be updated when the draft EIR was continuing, was in analysis. And therefore we included 2020, what was the approved general plan at the time the draft EIR was prepared, and the draft 2040 policies were also included. In working with the city over the last 1 year, we've asked the city planning staff to provide sort of what were the changes, to walk us through what were the changes between the draft policies that were included in the draft EIR and the final policies that were in the adopted 2040 general plan. And that has allowed us to do a consistency analysis on whether any policies were changed such that it would affect the findings in the final EIR. And we've come to the conclusion that none of the conclusions in the final EIR would change. The final EIR is consistent with 2040 adopted general plan. Another concern raised was that the East Downtown Core Historic District boundaries were changed in the summer of 2021, and the draft EIR did not reflect the updated boundaries. We have updated the boundaries and done the analysis based on, criteria for evaluating changes to historic districts. And we've come to the conclusion that none of the alternatives would affect the designation of the historic district, and therefore no change in findings presented in the EIR. Next. Also, there was a concern, how is sea level rise, how is sea level rise addressed in the document, and whether, and in, project design in general. And to that, I'd like to point out that CEQA does not require that impacts of sea level rise be on the project be addressed, but rather how would the project affect sea level rise, or whether the project would exacerbate sea level rise conditions. And our analysis has shown that none of the alternatives would exacerbate sea level rise conditions. And in fact, being a transit center project, like being a transit supportive project, we would actually help in combating climate change and reducing vehicle miles traveled.
Right. Thank you, Shilpa. A couple more we wanted to cover. The city expressed some concern that the city's Santa Fe Transit Center guidance report wasn't fully incorporated into the draft EIR. So 2 points on that. We certainly appreciate the city putting together the guidance report, and it was used as we were developing alternatives in conjunction with city staff, alternative screening, and in public engagement materials when we went to the community. And so we certainly want to acknowledge that involvement and engagement. And so we are adding a reference to that guidance report as part of the final EIR. There's a comment about the need for a geotechnical investigation report. Essentially the response on that is that we did do some initial analysis using available data for geotechnical conditions. The analysis didn't identify any significant geotechnical concerns. The project does not include any significant structures, and so thus we don't expect any geotechnical challenges. The city policy requires a site-specific geotechnical investigation report prior to completion of design review, and that is our plan to do so as the project moves forward into design. There's an interest from the city in seeing some new and additional visual simulations, in particular for the move whistle stop alternative. And so we have a couple shown on the screen, and they'll be incorporated into the final EIR. But we really do want to emphasize that we haven't completed architectural design yet. The district has committed and is really excited about a community design advisory group that would be undertaken as soon as design is started, where community members, transit riders, and other interested groups would be able to participate and help influence the design. So we have renderings, we have visuals, but we really want to emphasize that this isn't necessarily what it'll look like. If people like it, that's great. But if they don't, we haven't settled on anything, and we haven't even gone through any sort of process yet. And we look forward to starting that process with close coordination with the city and members of that group as design kicks off. And then I believe the final topic here is memorandum of understanding. The city and the district, as well as other parties, have a memorandum of understanding that cover the essentially the transportation center project itself. And the city requested that the EIR mention that MOU and that it will be included to include reference to that. And that does discuss some of the process in terms of the city and district collaboration and approval. Okay, so then the final gets us to the city had requested recirculation of the draft EIR. And we spent a lot of time going over the comments in great detail and discussing as a team. And we feel that a recirculation of the EIR is not necessary. Either the comments went beyond what was required by CEQA, or we were able to address in working with city staff through minor revisions for the EIR. We did not identify any new significant impacts in addressing those comments. And then we also further will be extending the review period to allow city staff and city council more time to review the responses. So in light of that, we believe that we've addressed all the issues and concerns raised by the city, and thus recirculation is not an appropriate next step. So what are the next steps? So we will be releasing a final EIR, hopefully soon. We will expect city staff will review the final EIR. After the conclusion of that 30-day period, the Bridge District will consider and then may choose to certify the final EIR. The city is a responsible agency and has some additional, opportunity under the MOU to consider the approval of the selected alternative that the Bridge District will certify as part of that final EIR. So after certification, then we will commence design, including forming that community design advisory group. And of course, that certainly won't be the only community engagement. We expect a full, comprehensive stakeholder and community engagement process as the project starts on design. That concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm sure we have questions. So I'll start with Vice Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you for the great update. It is good to have the whole recap to bring everyone back up to where we are today. Appreciate all the work that everyone has done to go through this, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final EIR. From the community's perspective, I just want to get sort of a time frame. Best case scenario, when would ideally we want to start? When would the community actually start seeing something?
Depends on one's definition of something.
Yeah.
With the adoption of the environmental document,
Very
we would start
physically outside, being able to physically see work happening.
Maybe you
a
can
couple
speak to
years
the
away.
funding on that.
Once the environmental document is certified, then we would start the design process and the real estate or right-of-way acquisition process. And so it would take some time to acquire the properties for the selected and approved alternative. And during that time, we would have community engagement on the design process and put together the design. And then we would need the necessary money for construction. We have some, but not all the funding at this juncture. And there is still an outstanding court case with respect to Regional Measure 3 that does affect $30 million of the funding for the ultimate construction. But that'll in all likelihood be resolved one way or the other, long before all the real estate and right-of-way acquisition is concluded.
Okay. A long timeline.
It's a couple years away,
Yeah.
just to be honest with
Right.
people, to manage expectations. The right-of-way acquisition process will probably take about 2 years to acquire all the properties. Design will occur during the same time period. Then and only then would we be able to advertise a construction contract and actually break ground.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. That's exactly the answer I was looking for. In terms of the final EIR, the city will review and then go back again. Is there another round of iteration, or is final?
Typically, it's final, but it depends on if anything arises during the city's review or any other agency or individual's review of the final EIR. It'll be out there for 30 days for people to weigh in on it, and then we'll collect all that, and then we'll make a determination to have our board proceed or not proceed with respect to the adoption of the final EIR, and then the filing of a notice of its determination.
Right. All right. Thank you. That's it for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Bushy.
Just to follow on with the timeline. So a couple of years for right-of-way acquisition gets us out to say 2024.
That's correct.
And then design is happening at the same time. So we let the contract, construction begins 2025.
Realistically, late 2024, 2025. That's correct.
And time of construction.
It's probably 12 to 18 months between the actual bidding and the actual construction.
Completion of the construction.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's figure maybe 2 years just to make this all work out. So 25,
That's
that
right.
gets us to 2027.
Late 2026, early 2027. That's correct.
Fully operational.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, now, back to some other numbers. I understand that Marin Transit is back to 80% of its pre-COVID numbers. What is Golden Gate?
So Golden Gate overall is 42% of pre-pandemic ridership levels on our bus system, but I need to differentiate our bus system. we operate two types of bus service. One is what we call regional bus service. It's the buses that go from Santa Rosa to San Francisco along the 101 corridor, stopping at freeway bus pads, and then across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, connecting Del Norte BART to the transit center. That regional bus service operates 23 hours a day, and it serves people who do not have access to an automobile for a whole variety of reasons. Before the pandemic, that was about half of the hours of bus service we had out there. The other half the hours of bus service we had out there is people like you and I who were commuters. So today, that regional bus service, which is the routes 130, the 150, the 101, and 580s, that's back at 80%. And those are the bus routes that go into the transit center. The commute service is only at 20%. Our busiest commute route before the pandemic was a Route 4 out of Mill Valley. In the morning, we had 25 trips going from Mill Valley nonstop to the financial district. Today, we have only 4. But that's not a route that uses the transit center. The routes that use the transit center were about 80% of our pre-pandemic levels of bus ridership.
Do you remember how many or know how many people are going through the transit center on a daily basis?
I don't know the exact count today. I just know what our ridership is on our buses, and on those routes that use the transit center, we're at about 80% of pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, so that's about 80%. And so all the people who parked, like me, in the now empty lots, the 3 huge empty lots under the freeway were not, they're part of the missing 20%?
That's correct. The bulk of the ridership at the transit center was not commuters that parked into the freeway like you or I. We would see each other in the bus occasionally. It's folks that transfer between Marin Transit or other buses in our regional routes at that center, or people that get off there and walk. Marin Transit always has had more users of that facility for the last several years than we do, actually. But the under the freeway part is, it's not just bus that's down. We know how many people go into San Francisco every minute of the day because it's our bridge, our bus, our boat. In the commute, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. is down on bridge, bus, and boat. So the regional buses that have workers that may not have a car are back. Commuters, for the most part, are still working from home. At this juncture, downtown San Francisco has a 25% office vacancy rate. That is, the office space is not leased or occupied, 1 out of every 4 floors of every building in downtown San Francisco. So it'll take a while for that to sort itself out, as well as the ridership trends for people that used to commute in more frequently. Clearly today on the commute service, we do operate on ferry and on buses for those folks, say from Mill Valley or the Ross Valley. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday seem to be the days, and Mondays and Fridays are very light. And so we think that's probably going to continue for the next couple of years as downtown San Francisco reimagines itself as a regional and worldwide center.
And just to complete the picture, the boat, what is ferry ridership at?
It's back a little bit more, but that's what's back is the recreational trips. People will sell out a boat going to the ball game. They'll take a boat from San Francisco to Angel Island. Commute's slowly coming back there also. We added 2 ferry trips from San Francisco back to Larkspur in the evening earlier this month. So we're slowly adding service back as customers come back. Running empty buses and boats is bad for our bottom line, and it's really bad for the environment. So we are incrementally adding service as people come back, and we are seeing slow return of commuters. It's just very slow, but we are down about 45%. I mean, we're 45% back at ferry. It's come back a little faster than bus in the last couple of months, but a lot of that is more recreational base, not commute base. And the commute just started picking up in the last few weeks that we added those 2 extra ferry trips. For scale, we used to offer 42 trips a day between Larkspur and San Francisco. Today, with the 2 additional trips we just added earlier this month, we're up to 24 trips. So the commute is coming back slow, and we think it's going to be some time before it comes back to its prior levels, and it'll probably be different than it was before. But at some point in the future, those empty office space, 1 out of every 4 floors and buildings in San Francisco, will be occupied with something.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Micah.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I have a few questions. So the first one, I was looking at some of your pictures on the website and for the EIR, and when you are doing like the bike lanes and the bike connections, one of them you were mentioning that you are moving the pickup drop off. So will that be, I was just trying to figure out in that screen where where it goes. And I'm thinking also about the bike lane, how it connects from, before 3rd Street into that area. So one is the connection about the bike lane, just to make sure that it's connected and it's fluid. And the second one is like, how do you differentiate that with the pedestrians, that they are walking versus people biking up potentially?
I'll let Adam answer that. We did receive comments from the Bike Coalition. They were on the draft. They are supportive of the project. They had one concern, and that's the issue that Adam, I believe, addressed that he can point out on the slide.
Yeah. And am I able to present the slide again?
Thank you.
Okay, let's see if I can zoom in here. Okay, so what you see on the screen here, I tried to zoom in as much as I think is legible. So again, north is to the right, and so 4th is on the right side of the screen, 3rd is on the left. So with the move, whistle, stop alternative, there would be a 2-way cycle track raised up on the curb on the west side of the street. Behind the bus bay. So all the bus passengers would be on the curb, there'd be shelters, all that would happen on the curb. Behind that, there would be this 2-way bikeway. Not shown on the screen, but it would actually continue down to 2nd and meet up with the Mahone Creek path down south of 2nd. So it really ties in well to the city's improvements down along Mahone Creek there. So that'd be a perfectly seamless connection, a 2-way protected facility all the way down there. On the north side, we would cross 4th Street and then connect in to the city street of Tamalpais. That is planned for improvements at some point in the future. We don't want to get ahead of the city and presuming what that might be, but I think we have a good connection to that future connection north of 4th.
Great. And do you have so where would you have the pedestrians versus the bikers?
Yeah, so it would be a marked bike area with some sort of pavement signage there. The pedestrians would be along the curb. It's a little deceiving here. It's actually pretty wide. I don't have the exact dimensions, but it would be a fairly wide sidewalk along the curb, and the bikes would be behind that. This is also an area that I think can get refined a lot further as part of design in terms of specific treatments and signage and pavement markings and all that. I think there's a lot of opportunity to refine that. But the current idea is that it would be a separated facility for cyclists that wouldn't have to mix with the buses or the bus passengers, which I think is the key.
Great. No, this is great. Something that I've been observing is like the bikers, sometimes they go pretty fast, especially with like the electric bikes and people walking. And I know that there are like some serious incidents. So how can we put that in a way that is for both, but is in a safe way? So that's one of my comments. The other one was around parking for bikes. And I'm thinking about EV chargers, bike share. Are you putting that in the plan as well?
Yes, absolutely. And we have a call out here for bike storage. And so the idea that's on the left side of the screen here, this is also something that we anticipate further refining as we go along, but that absolutely is part of the project. I envision a variety of, I think these are racks right here in the middle of the screen, but we would also have a higher quality set of bike parking, whether it be lockers or a bike cage or other types of really high quality, safe and secure bike parking. But the idea is that we would have bike parking located throughout the site, really for convenient and accessible bike access.
Great. And the bike share, I mean, I guess that is like.
Absolutely. Yes, that too. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. I love all the answers. The other part, I'm thinking about, the environmental design, and part of what I'm thinking, since this is going to be functional in 2027, I'm thinking about, there is these new porous materials that absorb the water instead of going into the road. So that's just a comment to see that would be a possibility. I know it's not cheap, but as we are looking into the future.
Yes, that is something we'll certainly take into account as part of design. I think we're also going for LEED certification for the customer service building. The idea is to make this as sustainable as possible, but getting in the details of exactly the treatments we'll do as part of design.
And my last one is around green spaces, as this is going to be a place for people to wait for the bus, sitting areas, canopies for the rain, trees, exercise, little machines for the streets. So is that something that you're going to be waiting for input from the community, or is that something that you need to include now in the EIR?
So we actually have, you can see this plaza in this part of the screen. So that was actually something that the city had expressed interest in, was a plaza at Tamalpais and 4th at that intersection. So that is something that we have incorporated in. At this point, we don't want to be prescriptive on exactly what the plaza would look like. I think we're really looking for community input to help drive that. But yes, there would absolutely be a plaza there to really meet that city goal. I think it dates back as far as the station area plan, and want to make sure that that is included in this concept. And then we look forward to working with the community to define what that plaza looks like.
Thank you so much. I'm thinking that now we have more than figured out how to get to San Francisco. It's like how people living in Richmond or Vallejo is going to make it to San Rafael and then go to work, because that's what we are seeing a lot. So, okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Thank you for being here, Dennis, and contingent from the Golden Gate Highway and Transportation District. I have a couple questions. The Community Design Advisory Group, can you elaborate a little bit about selection of members of the community that would join that, or is that still under design at this
It's still under design. I've talked to the city manager a fair amount about it. You know, the typical design review process generally has a couple of local architects involved, and this is really a project for the people. So we envision working with the city and selecting a group that would have basically people that use the facility, people that basically drive by the facility, and people that are neighbors of the facility, because they all perceive it differently. And assembling a group, not too large though, so it's unwieldy, and to have them be the sounding board as we go through the design process. Because those three groups will all perceive that plaza differently. They'll all perceive the need for public artwork as part of this differently, and how the features come together. And so we think it is a somewhat signature project. It is the gateway to your downtown. We think it's important to take the time to have a slightly different process than normal that engages the broader community. Certainly the Canal Alliance and residents of Canal need to have a significant stake in this. They're the principal user of the facility, so it needs to work for them. So to have a process that doesn't include representatives, in my opinion, would be inappropriate. And same with the neighbors and people that drive by it. They all have a different sense of what it is. But I think if we bring them all together, we can collaborate and come up with something. So the renderings just are like bookends and placeholders to help frame that.
That's great. Thank you. And maybe this is more of a request, because obviously it's not obligatory, but for us to be a part of that design, which is just a request, that would be great.
Definitely.
Thank you.
It's your community.
Thank you. With respect to, this is looking into the future as we've done with some of the questions. I imagine there's a moment where construction is happening and then this new facility, there's a ribbon cutting someday. Is there a moment when one day buses go into the old facility and then the very next day goes in, or is there a transition period? How does that look?
More likely it's flip the switch, one day old, next day new, and then the old facility is available to be redeveloped to help pay for part of the cost of the project.
Thank you.
And that's a separate project we'll be working very closely with the city on at some future date.
Thank you. There was a slide talking about the impact of queuing, and I think it was implied, but it wasn't explicit. So maybe I'll just ask directly. Is it expected that, as a person who experiences this, we see the trains come in almost at the same time and everyone waits and they depart. So we're thinking that moving it, one block over, assuming that's the alternative that we select, that there's going to be it'll be pretty much the exact same amount of queuing time, or is there any improvement as far as how SMART could be coordinated?
Well, I guess the project itself is not undertaking any changes to SMART operations. So we assumed a worst case. What I will say that the project can control is one benefit of the move whistle stop alternative is it does provide some bus bays on the west side of the SMART tracks. So buses that stay on the west side and don't need to go to 101 can pull in, pull out without having to wait for the train to cross. And so that not only benefits the buses significantly, but also benefits traffic too, because those buses aren't stuck in the queue. They can actually get in and out. And so, we did take into account relocating the bus bays and the advantages of that, but we assumed a worst case for SMART. And I believe that SMART and the city or have been working, I believe, is my understanding, to try and optimize some of that. But it's a separate effort from this project.
Thank you. I have comments and I'll reserve till later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. I have a few questions. Thank you both. Thank you for the questions we've already had. I just have 4 questions. So first one on sea level rise. I understand the flipping of the conversation of how does it impact, obviously, probably through greenhouse gas emissions. And so your answer was, what I heard was, we're not even going to look at in this conversation how sea level rise will impact the facility. It's the other way around. So when does that come into play? Because we know with sea level rise, this area is the first ever inundation. So that answer struck me as a little bit of jarring because it has to be talked about at some point. And I would not ever want it to be, oh, we'll talk about it then, we'll talk about it then. And then it doesn't get talked about when we build a facility that's flooding with the first 100-year flood.
So the EIR does discuss sea level rise as to what is the potential for sea level rise, what is the potential for inundation at each of the sites, and what is the conclusion is that none of the sites are worse than what is at the existing transit center. And that's kind of, we're not worse than the existing transit center. And the second is there are some design features that can be included in the transit center, such as, from the general plan policies, there's some recommendations such as higher foundations, etc. And through the design process, those will be considered to be included in the design.
I was going to add to that.
Yeah.
When we go through the design review process, our city engineer will review that proposal and assure that they're complying with flood elevation requirements. So it's going, they will be providing this, their civil drawings, but we will be scrutinizing those at the time as well.
It would be a good thing if the final EIR actually mentions everything you just said. This document, many of you in here are very familiar. You understand what the document does and doesn't do, but this is going to be very well scrutinized, as it should be, by our community. So I've heard this enough. So we need to recognize that what you just said, what you both just said, would be really helpful. So thank you for that clarification. The next question, one of your slides was on geotechnical findings, and you made a comment that there were no significant structures, but there are going to be structures. So could you just clarify what you meant? And then you had a picture that had structures. So
yes, there was a question, I think that was specifically, there's a question from the city about pile driving.
Yes.
And we do not expect any pile driving as part of this project. There would not be, basically the only structures would be the customer service building, which is a building, it is a structure. I guess that's sort of the semantics of significant, but there will be a customer service structure. There will be shelters for the users. There will be structures on the site, but the structures will not have any significant foundations that would cause geotechnical concerns, I think is what the intent of the.
okay, because Sigor, you do look at geotechnic. There are reports that are included. Okay.
Yeah, so we did. There's some nearby projects that we looked at their as-built in terms of borings, and so we have done that analysis. It's just the actual geotechnical investigation report comes once we pick the site and get into design.
Okay, thank you. One of your slides also talks about the MOU, and thank you for adding that additional clarification into the final EIR. Could you further describe what decisions must be approved by the city?
Sure. We need you to bless the project so we can get that $30 million.
So when you say bless the project, exact. So is that we're approving also the final EIR? Are we approving the final design? What are the things that we all need to be in concert on?
We need your approval for curb cuts. So we move curb cuts around. So the city will have a lot of discretionary authority over the project because they're your streets. You control the streets, and you control for any property owner where you do or do not have a curb cut. And so the city will have several points where they will touch the project, where you will have the ability to say yes or no. The environmental process is a chance for you as a cooperating agency to, weigh in and opine on the project and make sure that it's heading in the right direction or not. But the city will have per the MOU, certain authorities, but also separate from that, the curb cuts will all require your approval.
Right. Well, thank you. And I was thinking bigger than curb cut. So the final EIR, does the
Driveways.
city council approve the final EIR as well?
Since it's your.
We do have our Sabrina Teller, our attorney. Your council does have to accept the EIR as well. We are a resource agency, so we have to go through our process as well, and we have to evaluate a document, a design review. And so in doing that, we have to have a certified document. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Welcome.
Good evening, Sabrina Teller from Remy Moose Manley. I'm the city's outside CEQA counsel on this project and others. So what Ali was describing is the process for a responsible agency, as that term is defined under CEQA. And what that means is that you have some discretionary authority over some portion of the project, but you're not the lead agency. And so, you know, as required under law, the transit district has consulted with you and is continuing to consult with you. But ultimately, when it comes time for you to make your own decisions about things like curb cuts and other discretionary approvals for the project, you'll be tasked with making your own findings about the significance of the impacts, about the appropriateness of the mitigation, the effectiveness of the mitigation. And if you disagree with the contents of the final EIR, then your obligation would be either to challenge that EIR in court or to prepare your own analysis or subsequent or supplemental analysis if you think that you should be reaching different conclusions about any of those impacts. Typically, a responsible agency, you know, does agree with the lead agency if there's been sufficient coordination and, you know, ultimately agreement on the issues. And so hopefully that's what will happen here. But you do have to act in your independent capacity and exercise your independent judgment and make findings that document that thought process when it comes time for your approvals.
Thank you. That is very helpful, very clarifying. So I understand about the final EIR. What about the design?
So we envision a process working through the city with the community on a design that meets the expectations of the community. I think I briefly outlined a concept we have for a process, but the design does involve things that on our final plans you will have to approve. And I mentioned curb cuts, but you know, if you envision the site, we're rearranging all the driveways around there, and you ultimately have to say that's okay or not as part of the design process. So you'll be a partner till the end. You'll have to give us ultimate permission for our contractor to do some of this work. And so you'll be relying upon your findings, hopefully on our document, but you will have certain steps where you will make discretionary decisions to allow us or our contractor to proceed.
Okay. So in very straightforward language, when the design comes forward, I'm going to really simplify it. The design comes forward to the council and there is a discussion and vote on approving or moving that forward that design. And I ask, we've gone through design with our public safety building, so it's not like we haven't done this process before, but that's why I want to be crystal clear about what is the role of the city.
Yeah, so part of our MOU did clarify that we are going through a design review process. So
okay.
They will be submitting a design proposal. We'll be evaluating just like we evaluate other projects, taking it through the process, and we'll get the, you know, we'll be presenting that to your council for a final decision.
Okay. Thank you. And I do appreciate the idea of a design committee and probably doing categories versus individuals. Yes. And I liked how you described that, people that drive by, people that use it. I think that's a great approach. And then the final question is, you had talked about the preferred alternative, and I think there are 4 there now. Could you walk us through what is the process for selecting the final alternative with each of our agencies?
For each agency, I would defer to your CEQA counsel. But under CEQA, several years ago, there's a court case that said in the draft, you should now identify a preferred alternative, which is not selecting, but that way people don't think you're going to do a last minute switch and direct them one way and pick another. So we did that as part of this process. But for our board, after the final EIR is released, after we receive comments and other things, our board will certify the final EIR or not. And then we'll file a notice with the state clearinghouse, which I believe is the legal step. And then that is our deliberate decision saying, this is the alternative, which is really a location. It's not the final design or anything. It's of those choices based on striking a balance among all the things society values in environmental law.
Okay. I appreciate that because this is a huge project and it involves a lot of agencies. And the more we can articulate for everyone in the room, everyone watching, the better we will all understand what our roles are.
And the intent of the MOU was to help clarify and give you
Exactly.
authority so you felt comfortable with the project proceeding.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Those are the questions I have at this point. I don't see any additional, so I will open it up to public comment on this item. And I will start with folks in the room. Mr. Rhodes, come on down.
Well, you already know who I am. So I'm here to express support for the Bridge District's Transit Center preferred alternative. It's gratifying the Bridge District and city staff have worked together to address CEIR comments received from council and staff. My support is based on the following considerations. The Transit Center provides an opportunity to improve user experience and safety, encouraging people to use transit. It supports the Downtown Precise Plan by improving transit access, walkability, and reducing dependence on automobiles and the need for parking. It supports the city's environmental goals and policies, most specifically, reducing greenhouse gas production. It provides a rare opportunity for placemaking downtown. This includes restoration of the Northwestern Pacific Railroad Depot to its optimal period of significance and architectural appearance, creating public spaces, improving the routing of the North-South Greenway, and providing an opportunity to create a gateway for 4th Street. It attracts significant external public investment to our downtown. It represents a commitment by San Rafael and the Bridge District to public and active transportation. We need to do our best to assure public transit success, including both rubber tire vehicles and SMART, rather than expecting them to fail. The Transit Center is proposed for a high-profile location downtown. It's reasonable to expect exemplary design for our Eastern Gateway. The design presented in the EIR will be subject to considerable refinement. The district is committed to working with stakeholders and the city in the community design phase to achieve the best results. Please support the district's preferred alternative in the community design process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Kate and council members. My name is Kevin Haggerty, and I'm here tonight as chairman of the League of Women Voters of Marin County Transportation, Land Use, and Housing Committee. The League has been monitoring the San Rafael Transit Center project for some time, providing written comments on the project or to the project sponsor and the city council at various times during the planning and environmental process. We believe that this is an important project for the city of San Rafael and the residents of Marin County. We also believe that the current proposed site would enhance the city's downtown, as well as providing needed public transit to those who travel to and from the city. Although the city council is not formally acting on the project tonight, the League of Women Voters encouraged the city to continue to work closely with the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District in moving this project forward. We would encourage the city to support the preferred alternative in the draft EIR document. We believe it is the safest and one of the best and the best one that serves the needs of those who use public transit in San Rafael. Thank you, and the League appreciates the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and we'll continue to do so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty.
Good evening, Council. I'm Bill Carney, Sustainable San Rafael. Good to see you all. We continue to believe that viable and appealing transit service remains the core answer to traffic congestion. in Marin. It provides essential infrastructure to support a walkable, bike-friendly, thriving, livable, equitable, and low-carbon community. Nothing in the last 2.5 years has changed that basic equation. And the flexibility of the whistle-stop block alternatives allows for future transit service to evolve as needed. With your support, transit ridership will continue to recover. And what has already come back is traffic congestion. And that will ultimately drive increased use of transit into the future. At the same time, our streets are not going to get any wider. And so it's timely that we prepare now for improved transit by continuing with the process of creating the very best possible transit center for our city. And we certainly look forward to the community design group process that's been proposed. It sounds like a great idea. There are a lot of things in this as we see more and more details and see how the final tweaks have been incorporated in the EIR that we will have comments on. I think we foreshadowed that a lot in the correspondence we provided already, both to you and to the district. So we look forward to the process. It's been a long time. We have a long time to go, but let's get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney, and thank you for your email. Others in the chambers want to comment on this item? Not seeing any. Is there folks virtually who'd like to comment on the presentation?
We do have some hands raised.
Yeah, this is John Reynolds. I appreciate this moving forward to decrease traffic and to provide a place that people riding bikes and pedestrians and people from the canal and other parts of the community can utilize in a very sound way. The only thing that maybe I don't even need to raise this issue, but it goes back. I just wanted to assume that you've considered as part of EIR the input of tribal and indigenous communities. They may have not talked about this issue, or it's not been necessary for their voice, but if they've had a voice, maybe you can consider that, but I assume that's already been done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds.
This is Ava Crisanti. It's jarring to see the well-heeled white homeowners get up one after the other to discuss this, and to see Dennis Mulligan, whose salary and compensation exceeds $400,000, talk about their plans for a system that primarily working class people will need to rely on. It seems to me that there's very little input in these meetings from the actual labor, that relies on this transit. People like Mr. Kearney can get around in their private cars. The rest of us are on bikes and on the buses if we have to. And very little has been said about the drivers who are making a surprisingly low wage for what they're doing. Golden Gate Transit drivers are not well compensated, especially considering the cost of living. So, these plans should not be made when they exclude, the planning process itself excludes the working class. And that, every aspect and the drivers. I mean, the labor aspect of this is really important. And that's something that you'll never hear from Bill Kearney. You rarely hear from any of these characters. And they won't be the people who rely on this system. So I think you need to make sure that you're incorporating that input. Similarly, with all these plans for unhoused people, you never let them on commissions. You never let them even voice their concerns.
Just a reminder, we are so appreciative of public comment. We want to hear what people have to say about the project, and we prefer people refrain from talking about other speakers' comments, as we want everyone to feel comfortable approaching the council and to not be intimidated by comments from others.
Thank you. This is Warren Wells, Policy and Plan Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I want to thank the consulting team for their creativity in addressing the comments made by our organization and other bicycle users. In my opinion, that change represents a marked improvement on the proposed design. Our organization is still in strong support of the preferred alternative identified by the Bridge District, as mentioned by Mr. Dankberg. Consolidation of transit users onto a single block and minimizing crossings of downtown's busy streets would be a boon to pedestrians in the area where there have been far too many tragic crashes. Despite the COVID pandemic, transit and the need for more transit is not going anywhere. Mitigating climate change, improving air quality, and improving road user safety, all with disproportionately impacts the city's lowest income residents, is crucially important, and I urge your support of this EIR. On one final note, given the lengthy timeline outlined by Mr. Mulligan for the project's completion, I do want to give a friendly nudge to council and staff to consider quick build improvements for bicycle users traveling north-south through downtown San Rafael between the Smart Pathway south of downtown and the one going over toward Terra Linda, given that this project will not be realized until the later half of the decade. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Wells.
Good evening, Mayor Kate and esteemed council members. I'm Aaron Burnett with Canal Alliance. At Canal Alliance, we truly appreciate how the Canal neighborhood was engaged during this process. As a result of that community engagement, we are proud to lend our organization's voice in support of the San Rafael Transit Center relocation. In the many ways, this project represents an opportunity not only for our city and region, but especially for the low income and Latino transit riders who make up a majority of the ridership. When the pandemic hit, low income transit dependent riders did not have the luxury of working from home and continued to ride in large numbers for jobs, medical care, groceries, and getting to school. During this time, credit should be given to the Golden Gate and Marin Transit for continuing all routes and in fact adding extra buses to address the reduced capacity limits. However, those buses could not always fit in the current transit center. Current Marin ridership is well over 80% of the pre-pandemic levels and continues to increase each month. Taking this into account, capacity and safety issues, we urge the city to move forward with this proposed new transit center configuration, specifically the move whistle stop alternative. The move whistle stop alternative is safer than all other alternatives due to passengers not needing to cross 2nd Street to transfer between buses and trains. The new transit center would also have better lighting and sight lines to improve safety, as well as a better array of passenger amenities. We believe all San Rafael residents deserve a transit facility that is more safe, modern, and welcoming than the one that is currently in use. The move whistle stop alternative represents just that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, Jonathan Freeman here again. It would have been great to see the slides before the meetings. One thought I have. But the other thing I noticed is that there was no note made of the tax extension defeat of 2 years ago. And it fell far short of the 2/3 needed. And I don't think there's any reason to assume that the empty trains will be approved the next time the extension is extended to the voting public. SMART has a losing record when it comes to elections with 3 losses. And interestingly, I think the train agency reportedly will proffer another chance for defeat in 2024. So with the future of the agency in such heavy doubt, why are we considering an EIR on the transit center, which would include empty tracks. Isn't it much smarter to consider developing something else where those tracks will soon be, empty tracks will soon be, like housing or a bike parking lot? So, I mean, 66% is really difficult to get to. And I think we really ought to plan for those tracks to be unused in 7 years from now.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, and I'll give everyone a couple of seconds and also just remind folks that if they're calling in, they need to press *9 to raise their hand. I see no further public comment.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. I'll close the public comment. And I heard if there are two question comments that I think are worth expanding upon. One is the role of community input so far and the role of community input going forward. I think you spoke to it, but there was some concern or more additional information asked. And then the role of SMART and how that affects this project as you see it.
Certainly, community input's been vital as we proceeded with the project, and we intend to continue as we have in the past, using the same venues, the same format, and same communication channels to reach the entire community. So that wasn't something that we started that we stop all of a sudden at this juncture, but it's certainly vital for the design phase. With respect to SMART, SMART is an operating transit agency. It receives money from the state as well as from the sales tax measure, which does have a sunset date. SMART is operating, and so we designed it for the current situation, consistent with environmental law. Environmental law says you take for granted that which is there in place. You don't assume that something will go away. To do so would be a legally deficient document. And so we embrace SMART. They're a great partner. They are, another cooperating agency as part of this project, and they're a vital partner. We have an MOU with them also because we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable that we're all headed in the right direction, and we're really proud to be a partner with SMART on this project.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll come back to the council for any additional questions or comments, and I'll start with the Vice Mayor. Go ahead.
I'm really excited about the future. I know we're going to recover. We're already seeing it quite a bit right now, and there is an increased need for bike and pedestrian safety. And so I really appreciate that as we go forward, that is continuing to be a focal as part of the design. I'd also like to see, as we go through looking at the designs, opportunities to phase in different aspects of the project. So it isn't necessarily a having to flip the switch approach, but maybe that's the only thing we can look for. But because it is such a long thread, maybe there are some smaller incremental things that we can do in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bushy.
I agree with the Vice Mayor. I think the future steps in this process will be the much more determinative of how it becomes part of our community. That is the architectural design and the final layout of the plan and how it integrates with all of these different objectives that we have. At this point, things look fine, but we've got some very, very big decisions to make over the next couple of years. This is our eastern gateway into San Rafael, and it really should be a goal of the project to have exemplary design. Sometimes large groups of input can lead to a phenomenon of a few too many cooks in the kitchen and no vision coming forward. So I hope that we can have a very vibrant architectural design that achieves all these working day goals for us as well, but leaves us with some inspiration and some lifting as you come into San Rafael. So with that, just small list of to-do list for the next couple of years. Thank you for the update, and we'll look forward to more of them.
Thank you. Councilmember Urens-Gulati.
Yeah, thank you again for the update and for all the modifications. I concur. It's very exciting. I like that you said that the transit is for the people. And I'm excited about the possibilities because we can design a transit that is just like all the, just check on all the boxes. But I think this is an opportunity for creativity and to really build those zones that we will be encouraging people to be walking, and it's something that people would like to go through that instead of just like trying to avoid it. So I look forward to, connecting with the community and see what great ideas come out and how we can, encourage everybody to start leaving the car home and use more public transportation and other ways to go around the city as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for previous comments. I agree with my colleagues. I think I would highlight the collaboration that I think we are seeing. I would say that from an outsider view, it looks like a very protracted process that's robust. I think that there's a lot at stake here, and so appropriately, it should be robust. I've appreciated the approach tonight, at least on face value. In the presentation, it looks like all of our concerns were conceptually addressed. Obviously, we'll look at the details, but appreciate the outreach on that. Looking forward to the continued engagement with the community. Thank you for including us in consideration for that community design review advisory team, and looking forward to continuing the robust process. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments. I was reflecting that when you were here, was it August or September? It was a very different meeting than I think the one we had this evening. And I'm happy about that. I'll speak for myself. After the end of that meeting, I thought, oh man, we're gonna have to start rebuilding some trust and get on the same page. I think we all kind of felt that, and which is why I had pushed very hard for recirculation of the draft EIR. I felt that was needed to start to reestablish the trust. This is a foundational document. Having said that, coming tonight and hearing what you've had to say and having talked to staff, I'm really grateful to all of you. It takes time to collaborate, and it is very evident that over the last year, you have been in conversation, you have going through each of it, everything that we outlined, but really to me, it was more the just general approach and saying, we're gonna get on the same page, we're gonna work through these together, we're gonna hear what the city has, we'll push back when we should, we push back, we won't push back when we agree with the city. And that really came through. And it's not just one agency saying this is the only way to do it. It has to be that push and pull. And I really feel confident after tonight that that is the type of relationship, and that is what is going on behind the scenes, because there's always a lot coming behind the scenes. So I really want to commend everybody who's been doing that. And we'll look forward to the final EIR. I appreciate the community coming out. They have been there to give the input prior. You're here tonight, you called in, you've written letters about the preferred alternative. We do recognize this is a really key corner. Having the plaza and having those little details will mean a lot to our community. And we had I think they were called city values, I don't know, city guiding principles, and that you went back and we took those really seriously. So we're glad that you've taken those seriously. Yes, the draft EIR and the final EIR, but that will really come through, I think, in the design. And appreciate the clarification about what all of our roles are, and when we have absolute decision making, and when we have independent making, and when we all need to be together. So, so thank you. I know this meeting probably went a little bit later than you might have imagined, but that is the awesome thing about coming to San Rafael, because we do cool things here in our meetings, and you got to see it all. So with that, we've all commented, and I would ask for a motion. It's accepting a report.
I'll make a motion to accept the report on the informational update from Golden Gate Bridge, Highway and Transportation District regarding the new downtown San Rafael Transit Center.
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadam Skalati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. I know many people are going to leave the chambers. We'll give them a moment, but we still have last but not least, because we're talking about a pump station. So we'll give everyone just a moment. Welcome. So the next item is the San Quentin Pump Station reconstruction. This is like a dramatic story in a way, but we're glad that you're here before us, and we'll turn it over to you. I see Director Miller here.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for having us tonight. I'm April Miller. I'm the Director of Public Works. Here tonight, I have Theo Sanchez. He's an associate on the CIP team in Public Works to present the San Quentin Pump Station project. Like you said, this is a pretty big project for the city. As we all know, our aging infrastructure is slowly getting to that point where we need to replace it. So this is one of the biggest projects we have going on in the city that is up for your consideration tonight. So I'll turn it over to Theo.
Welcome, Theo.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present this before you. We're going to be discussing the San Quentin Pump Station Reconstruction Project. This is a picture of the existing pump station right now. Just a quick overview, the location of this pump station is right behind Target off of Shoreline Parkway in the southeast section of the city. It was built in 1971, and its main function is to convey stormwater from a 400-acre watershed through a outfall pipe and underneath the levee into the bay. So it definitely has a very important function, because if it does not work, the area right here by 580 actually ends up getting flooded. And there was a point, I think, in the past where one of the lanes actually had to be closed down because of the pumps not actually working at the time and flooding occurring to an excess. There are some channels that run along the 582 that convey some of this storage. Also, these businesses are also affected. And potentially, if there is even more flooding, it could affect the canal area, because a lot of our storm drains and channels are connected. So this actually goes all the way through Kerner and into the Pickleweed area. So this is a picture that was taken half a year ago of the pump station in operation. And just to emphasize again, after more than 50 years of operation, it's past its useful lifespan. So when the pumps are on now, so much pressure is accumulating because of the force against the tide during high tides, that it backs up and it starts going through the cracks and pushing out in every single place it can find. So we had a bid opening for the construction project on September 1st of this year. The design engineer's estimate for the construction was $3.2 million. And that was last updated in June of 2022. You can see from our table, though, that was significantly lower than the bids that we received. The lowest bid of the 6 was $6.5 million. And you can see that the bids are pretty much all around the same kind of general values. So obviously that was a shock to us, and that made us wonder what was wrong in the engineer's estimate. So one of the small list of underestimated items is provided at the bottom. Across the board, anything dealing with shipping and hauling was a lot more expensive than we had estimated or our designer had estimated. And that was more likely due to the rising fuel costs. Anything associated with concrete, anything with electrical components. So we had to consider what were our options to try and see if we can reduce the overall construction cost. One of the options was rebidding the project. So frequently, because of the fluctuations in construction items, a project can be rebid at a different point during the year, because some items are more expensive during the construction season, which is usually during the summer. Well, we reached out to many contractors, construction managers, and public agencies, and all of them had the same general consensus that the general construction market has grown considerably more expensive. In fact, I talked with the project manager of Alameda County Water District regarding their Kirtner Road Booster Station upgrade project, which also included replacement of pumps and electrical components. As you can see there, their engineered estimate was $4.2 million, and the low bid that they received was $6.5. So everyone's saying the same thing. Things are a lot more expensive this construction season and it's been unprecedented for several years. So it's a different climate now. And everyone agreed that rebidding would likely result in higher bids even. See, and as I listed previously, because some of these items, concrete, electrical components, they don't necessarily fluctuate in pricing throughout the year, it wasn't a high probability that we would get better pricing. And in addition to, a lot of items related to the project have long lead times, meaning that it takes a long time from when you buy it to when you finally receive it. For instance, the pumps themselves, the estimate was it would take 42 weeks to reach the project site. So pushing things back with a rebid would just mean that we'd have a pump station that already needs replacement waiting longer for that replacement. So choice number 2, value engineering, which basically just means we're looking at the project elements and details, determining what we can remove or change to reduce cost. So first item that we considered was to take away from the project the slip lining of the outfall pipe, and I'll explain what that is. So the outfall pipe, as shown on the screen, is what conveys flow from the pump station into the bay. It had been reported from our maintenance staff that there were leaks in this outfall pipe. When it was operating, you could see water accumulating on the ground. One of the issues that was apparent was a settlement because it's all bay mud. The settlement of the outfall pipe was different than the settlement of the pump station. So you have this situation where they're kind of disconnecting. So you have along this 1,000-foot stretch of outfall pipe, a lot of disconnected joints, which probably resulted in these leaks. So the original design was to put a HDPE, which is just a high density polyethylene pipe of smaller diameter into the existing one. So to kind of allow it to settle, but also slide inside of the existing. Well, this is a picture that I took with our designer. We went inside to verify what kind of condition the outfall pipe was in. And initially we thought it was going to be full of barnacles and just in a very dilapidated, but as ugly as this looks, it's still okay for a reinforced concrete pipe. It still performs its function correctly. So it was decided that we could take away the slip lining, and that actually would result in a $396,000 savings estimated. The second item that we considered was to use 2 pumps instead of 3. So this is a picture of the layout. The numbers indicate the different pumps that would have been used initially. Originally, 3 were proposed because our maintenance staff wanted some redundancy so that in the event that you need to work on one, you could have the other 2 still operational. The basis of design report that was done for this way back a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when we did the the mitigated negative declaration, identified that 2 pumps actually would be sufficient to deal with a 100-year storm. So in this condition where we're trying to save money, we decided to take out one of these pumps with the intention to leave everything the same in the design so that in the future, we can install the 3rd one. This would result in a $328,000 savings. And again, just to reiterate, even with 2 pumps, we still have 100-year flood protection. So with those 2 value engineering items put together, let's look at the overall construction costs. The original low bid was $6.5 million with a 10% contingency. You're looking at $7.2 million for the contract total. But deducting the items that we just mentioned, you would have a $6.5 million contract after that, the deductive change order. I'll mention too that in addition to looking at the construction items that were listed, we also took a fresh look at the construction management contract, which is also in the staff report for consideration tonight. And this negotiated a reduction of those expenses by $47,000. And also, there are some additional items that we've been discussing with the contractor to change some of the electrical components and reduce costs there, but we have not yet gotten the quotes for that yet. So after the project has been awarded, we'll be seeking those the things that we can do to save on those items. So in total for all 3 of these contracts that will be paid for with COVID relief funds, we have the construction contract, that's $6.5 million, a construction management contract, and another construction support amendment. In total, we have about a $7.2 million project to construct this new pump station So the question might have come up, why COVID relief funds and why don't we use our stormwater funds that are meant for these purposes? So that's what I'm showing here on this table. Our Fund 205, which is our stormwater activity fee, every year, annually, we receive 840,000 from this about. 765,000 is just for system maintenance and utilities associated with those things. So it leaves us with only 75,000 to do anything new or anything that we have to repair that isn't already part of the maintenance. So obviously can't be something that we just constantly wait on to aggregate to have enough money to do a $7.2 million project. We will also point out that staff recognized that the construction was not something that we had with city funds, the ability to be able to construct. So we had actually applied for a couple grants. In 2019, we applied for FEMA hazard mitigation grants, and then in 2020, state urban flood protection grant. Neither of those were successful. So the, I should mention, I forgot, yes, sorry. So then the question comes up with the stormwater fees, should they be raised? And a case definitely can be made for it, but a survey was conducted and we have spoken with a lot of different companies, and the general climate of the economy obviously is one of stress on most people across the board, and it just would not be the appropriate time to expect people to contribute more for this at this time. So this is my second to last slide, estimated schedule for the project. So if we awarded the project today, then we have to consider again the long lead items. I listed how long it would take to get some of these items there. And we also need PG&E to move a pole that's in the way. But we're thinking that the construction could probably start sometime winter, spring 2023. And the items of work. So the plan would be to fix the outfall pipe first, construct the new pump station next, and then remove the existing pump station last. That way we maintain flood protection throughout the entirety of the project. So the new pump station would theoretically, if this holds, be operational fall, winter 2023. And then finally, the last item, removing the existing, would probably be done by spring 2024. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'm ready for questions.
No, great presentation. My favorite picture is the one with you inside the pipe. I'm sure we have a few questions. I'll start with the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Great report. In terms of the value engineering of the items that have been taken out, this is always that game of are we really saving? Because at the end of, will it come back and bite us later? And so I guess my question is, if we could decide to go forward with the full, which would be, it's hugely expensive, but could we also consider if we need to add in that third pipe? Is that something we could do later on if we have the funding, or the, what'd you call it, slip
lining?
Slip lining. Is that something we could do later if we identify that there's funding?
Yes, the way that everything is designed with the modifications, everything in addition that we left out could be added in without any significant changes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. That was a great presentation. Thank you. One thing that wasn't highlighted, and I think would be great for the public to hear, is the impact on staff. I had the opportunity when I first joined the council to go on a tour with former Director Bill Guerin, and I was struck by his testimony of the lengths to which staff have to go in order to make these pumps work in the middle of an event, out there in the elements, making it work. Can you maybe elaborate further on how that experience would be different for staff once this is concluded? Because I think they incur a fair amount of risk to be out in the elements, that close to heavy equipment. Maybe you can walk us through what that would be like for staff during those events.
No, definitely. So on all our pump stations, one thing that we've been considering is adding a SCADA system so that they can be used remotely.
Can you expand the initialism for SCADA?
If I knew what they were.
System control and data acquisition.
Okay. But yeah, I just know it's like a remote thing that allows you to be able to use it without being there. Yeah, but so in addition to that though, currently right now from what I've been hearing, the maintenance is something that they have to look into on a fairly frequent basis. And also because of how old some of our equipment is, it's very difficult to find replacement parts. But in general, we've been looking at trying to find ways to make it easier on our maintenance staff. The new pump station will have space for a portable generator. And all of that has been, we've worked with our maintenance staff to make sure that everything is set up so it's just an easy thing for them to drive it in and then put it together, connect it with an automatic transfer switch, and then that way you don't have to have somebody there babying it the entire time if it's necessary. So trying to take our manpower to where it's important and necessary versus having somebody spend all their time watching over equipment is something we've been trying to apply.
Yeah, can I add one thing? Also, right now, we don't have flap gates on our system because they're broken. And so what happens now is when there's high tide, water backs up through our system and actually floods the neighboring property. So we're running our pumps throughout the summertime too, which is also causing them to fail sooner. So just even the fact that we're out there throughout the year, not even just in the winter, maintaining them, it's a significant toll on our staff.
So maybe what I'm also hearing is that this improvement would also allow employees and contractors to be allocated to other things that are maybe more strategic in our community.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And then I think maybe going back to the initial comments, and thank you for elaborating on the impact that it would have if the pump station were to fail. My understanding too is that there's a cascading effect that if that were to fail, it puts more stress and strain on all the other pumps in our system, and there are many. And so anyway, I just wanted to see if you could affirm, what that cascading effect would have.
Should I go on Google Maps and show? Okay. Sorry, I get technical sometimes. The storm drain system in the canal area is interwebbed. It's all connected. So the storm drain basically carries an amount of water that is shared across multiple pumps. The San Quentin one is behind Target. The Kerner one is over there by Pickleweed Park. The 400 Canal one is by 400 Canal. All of those are connected. So they're already, dealing enough with as it is. So obviously if you have one, the potential of, significant amounts of flooding throughout the entire area has been seen in the past. In the October storms of last year, there was flooding that occurred on Anderson and Bellum. And part of that was, again, because of an overstress of the system. So one of the things that we are looking to do by the end of this fiscal year is a storm drain master plan to look at our entire storm drain system, identify the weak points, and see what we need to do to systematically keep it maintained and to deal with the obvious impacts of climate change, which anticipate larger, more frequent storms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll go with Councilmember Micah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for the great presentation. So you were just talking about climate change. So as we are going to do our new sea level adaptation plan, is this going to be like following the adaptation plan? Meaning like this is going to be for the long term, so we don't want to build something that we might have to change later. So can you talk a little bit about that, how that will integrate?
Right. So right now with just 2 pumps, it's enough to handle the 100-year storm as has been identified with current data. So in the future, with sea level rise, we're talking about even higher tides than is currently seen. And that would mean even more pressure that the pumps would have to fight against. Each pump by itself can handle 100 cubic feet per second of discharge. So with 3 pumps, then obviously that would significantly increase the pump capacity. that is a huge leap forward from the existing pump station's capacity, which I believe combined is only 50 cubic feet per second. So it definitely will be able to deal with higher sea levels and more flow in from the interior drainage,
Okay.
which is the overall goal of dealing with sea level rise, obviously, is being able to account for that.
Thank you. The other question I have, I also love the picture inside the pipe. That's wow. I don't know that I will be able to do that. So the project that we are talking about is just to replace the pumps, not the pipes. Or like, are we talking about the entire pipe, or is just the pumps?
The project will be fixing the locations that have already been identified as having leaks or disconnected joints on the outfall pipe. So there's probably like 3 or 4 places that we're going to go in and replace those sections.
And do we know, because this is like a 51 years old, 52 years old?
Yeah.
Do we know if there's going to be other areas, because we are not replacing the entire pipe? Will there be any other probably weak areas like in the future or in the near future that needs to be replaced? I'm just thinking, as the earth moves and stuff, if you already have a few, chances are that they might have more along the line. So what's the plan around that?
Well, after 50 years, we've been able to identify only these specific locations. So usually the way that it would work with settlement is there'd be a point where it would reach its max amount of settlement in a specific area. So if we were able to fix those locations and get those fixed, I doubt that we would see anything anytime soon, but obviously there's a potential, and in that case, we'd have to address it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my last question was just like, when you're working on pumps, I was just trying to understand, like, how long does it take? Does it take like an hour? Does it take like 3 days? Does it take like a month? When you're talking about like having 2 pumps and the ideal is to have 3, so when you have one that you're working on, you can have the other ones functional?
Sorry, so yes, if you have to work on one, so if you have a 2 pump scenario and you have to work on one, yes, the other one would be maintained and running all the time. The way that the pumps are set up, they cycle so that you don't have the same one running all the time and then wearing it down. So yeah, it's meant to be able to kind of save the life and expand it longer like that.
And the time frame just varies. Right now, our pumps are so old that we have to take one out and rebuild it, which takes a lot longer than right now. That's why we're suggesting 2 now, because they're going to be brand new pumps that have significantly more capacity than the existing pumps. So it'll take longer for them to get to the point of wearing down, where that we can save up to afford the 3rd pump.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Bushy.
This is such an important project. I'm so glad that that you brought this forward. It is a little bit alarming, though, about the financial side of it, and how we got into this situation with something that's 50 years old and we don't have any kind of a sinking fund, and we, but for the grace of a pandemic, we wouldn't have money to do this. So with that preface, your storm drain master plan, which sounds like it's high time for us to have one of those. Will it be including a financial plan to pay for these needed improvements?
Just like some of the other master plans we're doing right now, we're doing the Park and Rec master plan and the building maintenance master plan. There will be estimates associated with the costs of replacing some of these. I mean, the goal is to figure out kind of what our unfunded liabilities are and our maintenance deficiencies that we have, so we know what that number is. That number is going to be alarming, but we want to at least know. We want to know like what we need to do and what the plan is, and what the time frame is. And I mean, that's really what we're trying to figure out, is how much do we think it's going to cost? How much time do we, what other ticking areas are there that we need to worry about in the pump station, so that we know what our goals are and how much money we need. But yeah, we can also look at different opportunities. There's a lot of grant funding out there right now that we're exploring, and we'll continue to explore. Hopefully, we can afford our 3rd pump through one of those funding sources, and we're just going to continue to look at that. But before we have a plan or know what we have and what state it's at, we can't apply for funding until we know that. So that's what our goal is, to start that plan.
Absolutely get and know what we need to do and on what schedule and an estimate of how much it's going to cost, and then look at ways of funding it that are within our control, so that we're not just hoping and praying that something else terrible happens and we have a bunch of money. And just to circle back on a question that might require the city manager's input. If I'm remembering correctly, we had about $16 million of COVID. So is this roughly half of our kitty?
Yeah, we had about $16 million in total ARPA funds. And I'd say, you know, it's not half, but it's a big chunk out of that piece. And so far, we've only spent a little over $1 million of that, primarily on homelessness, the case management services, the SSA costs. And we have been planning through those ARPA funds for this expense for some time. So there's adequate funds in the ARPA funds with the additional funds remaining for the other key policy areas that the council's identified for use of those funds.
Very good. Thank you. And my last question is super specific. Can't you just put a new flap gate on the end of the pipe? Well, no, not instead of the pump, but as an interim step, not instead of. No, no, I don't mean to suggest instead of. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest that. It's just, while this water's squirting up, couldn't, as an interim measure.
Right, so the existing pipe is a 60-inch diameter. So that's, the flap gates take time to order and get to the site, but the pump station itself already has space for flap gates within the pump station itself. Those are the ones that we're missing. Those are the ones that we needed to replace. And thankfully, our maintenance crews, I believe, just received them recently. So that made a little bit more sense to us, just because there was already a housing for it. You can just put it on and then call it a day, as opposed to installing a new one would mean excavation, environmental permits that we don't already have, probably BCDC issues if we're getting close to the shoreline.
Okay, so, yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a few more questions. So, and I know from the staff report, but just so anyone listening knows that the value engineering, you did work with the low cost bidder.
That's correct.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure if it opened it back up again through that. Okay. I also had questions about stormwater fees, but my quick question is that just a council action? If the stormwater fees were to be increased?
No, it's a 2/3 vote.
Oh, it is. It goes to the ballot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to
That's why
clarify.
we did the polling, polling to see what the economic
and
climate was.
because I know we're looking at our fees internally around building fees, but this is a separate category. Okay. So I just wanted to have that clarification because I did think it was a ballot measure. And what is it currently now per parcel? Sorry, I'm asking. I guess I could go look at my property bill. I'm sure it's on there. Okay. The last question was about, so the new pump station, do we have an easement or do we own that property? Because it looks like you have the old one and the new one, and I'm just curious about any sort of property owner issues and or BCDC issues if you're moving a structure versus just building on where it is.
I don't know if it's worth it for me to actually show.
No, I think you just speak to it.
So it's an easement, and it's only specifically along the little skinny area where the outfall pipe is, and then a detention pond in front of the pump station so that flow can accumulate.
And so, and the new pump station falls within that easement, and that easement has good, strong wording as we get ready to spend millions of dollars on this new, okay. Yeah, oh. Okay, those are my questions. Let's open it up to public comment. I will ask people in the chambers, come on down.
I actually have some familiarity with this project, and I have had a chance to look at the construction documents. I'm also familiar with the history of the pump station and the discharge pipe. And one of the historic problems has been the fact that you have this jointed concrete pipe and differential settlement, which results in leaks in the discharge pipe. Frankly, I'm skeptical about eliminating the sleeve. And I think that it would be perhaps a mistake, primarily because you are dealing with this concrete pipe with sections that may well continue to settle differentially. I guess the other thing that I think you may want to consider is how you abandon the existing facilities. Perhaps there's a way of not having to remove them completely, but maybe you just fill the cells with, concrete or not necessarily slurry or something like that. I would suggest to you, though, that it may be not worth the risk to eliminate that slip pipe through the jointed RCP. I think that would be a mistake. It is good that the new facility is not on pilings. That way, presumably, it won't be held up by the pilings. But I think you really want to reconsider eliminating that slip pipe. Thank you.
Thank you. And after public comment, we'll have staff respond to the concern and hear their input. Hello, Mr. Carney.
Hello again. Yeah, well, I know nothing about this, but I was attracted to stick around because it seems to me emblematic of the growing costs of climate change, and also of the growing need to plan for those impacts from climate change. And, as is beginning now in the canal, that adaptation plan, and with the new hiring of an adaptation planner, we're getting ready for a really major, planning effort that is going to involve major costs. And yeah, so, it's more than an engineering plan and a funding plan, important as those are. It's also a community plan, which the canal is about to engage in. And that's really a big piece of work over the next several years. So that's all context as well, to me, not to lose sight of climate change as a driver of costs, of impacts, first of all, real problems, and with real costs attached to them, and therefore the need not to lose sight of reducing those causes, the greenhouse gases that are causing climate change. So we've got to, do both things simultaneously, because we're not going to solve the impacts until we ultimately get a handle on the causes. So it brings that to mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? The chambers? Okay, we'll see if there are any virtual commenters on the San Quentin pump station. There are.
Good evening, Mayor Kate and council members. My name is Kate Powers. And first, I'd like to just appreciate Bill Carney's comments. I completely agree with him. And secondly, I just had mostly questions, and they are, if prices are going up, wouldn't adding the third pump back in also, wouldn't adding the third pump at a later time also bring the price of ultimately of having 3 pumps go up? And I'm wondering what would be the trigger or a possible reason to put the third pump in. What would bring that back for before city council to make a decision on adding a third pump? I'm wondering if there wouldn't be cost savings putting in the third pump in now because of construction efficiencies of bringing all the equipment out at one time. And also I believe that the COVID relief funds won't be available forever. And so I'm just wondering if this isn't a good priority on which to spend them. And I'm wondering if planning for a 100-year flood includes planning for sea level rise in terms of the rise of groundwater in the subsided site. And finally, I'm just wondering if you would have to go back and rebid the project if you were to do 2 pumps instead of 3, and any other modifications you make to the request for proposals for the original one. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
This is Ava Crisanti. I just want to point out that left unstated is that some of the biggest victims of recent floods in San Rafael in terms of, getting infections because of fecal contamination, because of sewage leaks. The storm last year really made a lot of people sick, especially in your SSA. You're leaving out the people who are most impacted by this. And this is something that unfortunately Bill Carney and Sustainable San Rafael also, managed to avoid talking about, is that the people with the smallest carbon footprint are the poor. And they are the people who are most impacted, and they are the people who have continually been shut out. In fact, I want to point out that Mayor Kate Collin, who seems to understand very little about democracy or free speech, seems to want to chide me, a commenter, for pointing out that there's a serious class differential in who gets heard at these meetings, who's welcome at these meetings, which perspectives are welcome. So while the mayor had lots of time to talk about how you shouldn't be able to reflect on your neighbor's comments, which is antithetical to the very idea of democracy as first, envisioned 2,500 years ago in Athens, she does have time to criticize me, but she does not have time to even acknowledge that her city was just recognized in one of the most respected publications in the world as having created an inhumane set of conditions, abject conditions for its poorest residents. And that should not be tolerated by the rest of the city.
I see no further public comments, but I'll give everyone a couple seconds. I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I will close the public comment and bring it back for comments from the dais after we have our questions. So one, if you could speak to the sleeve addition, and maybe, I don't know if there are other engineers, because I do think when you get a lot of engineers in the room, there might be as many opinions as there are engineers, but we would love to have that. If you could reflect on that. And then really just the whole conversation around the third pump. And if it's put in later, what does that do to the cost? What's the trigger for adding in a third pump? The third question was around 100-year flood, and does that include additional groundwater seepage or additional groundwater flow? And then the last one, rebidding with changes. I actually asked that question. You already said that was the new bids, or you already spoke with the bidders about this. So if you could speak to those other items, would be great.
Okay, so let me see if I can make sure I get everything. On the issue of the slip lining, it's a very valid point, definitely 100%. And it was something that we had proposed because, pump station doesn't have a whole lot of special bells and whistles that if you're trying to reduce costs, that you could just be like, oh, we don't need that, that's extra. There had to be a choice between the maintenance potential issues in the future and the initial upfront cost, which was the entire reason why we were trying to say, yeah, the upfront cost is really high now. If we reduce it now, there's a potential in the future that the cost for these items might not be as much as they currently are. Because when we talked with contractors, construction managers, they did say that this is unprecedented. They don't think that this is something that's going to last forever, but they also did say that they don't expect it to dip down to the way things were 10 years ago. So kind of hits the other point about the third pump. If you put that in, will it be more expensive? Yes, that's a very strong potential. And again, it's just about trying to reduce the upfront costs is what we were aiming for. It does not take away any of the safety, and there will always be a potential to put this in the future, and that's something that we'll be working to try and do. But again, that's the intent. As far as the deductive change order, I know the answer.
Yeah, we actually consulted our third-party attorney who deals with contracts and bidding, and they said that we could approach the low bidder on some of these items in order to reduce it. That's why in our staff report, we actually say that we have to award the full amount of the contract before we have a resolution that does a deductive change order. We actually did this a few years ago on Francisco West, where we removed part of the components on the bike path after we awarded the contract so that the contract value was lower.
Thank you. And then the question around the 100-year flood, just the terminology, does that also include an additional groundwater up? I don't know what the terminology is, but additional groundwater that be coming up.
So, okay. When they did the analysis for the pump capacity that was needed, they simulated a smaller storm that would take away the infiltration capacity of the basin. And then on top of that, a 100-year storm. So basically assuming that, okay, there's no seepage possible, there's no infiltration possible, what would happen if you just had 100% runoff coming to this? And so that's kind of a safer approach than assuming that infiltration would happen during a large event.
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear any other questions, so I will bring it back to the dais for additional comments on this item. I'll start with the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, and thanks to the public for the questions. We didn't get into it, and we don't need to get into it around the original cost estimate and why that one was a miss, but it could be a number of different things. But the cost, the differential right now, whether it's high because it's supply chain or it's cost of materials or labor or whatever, a combination probably of everything. I agree with you. I don't think that price is going to go, if it goes down, it's not going to go down significantly. I think we're just hearing across the board, prices are continuing to rise. And I have zero knowledge on pipes and pumps and whatever, but I do have knowledge of doing projects that we tried to save money and having it bite us later. And so I totally appreciate the value engineering work that you did to try to save $720,000, but on a $7 million project, I'm not sure. If you were saving $2 million, it'd be another conversation, but I'm not sure of what we're potentially leaving out in terms of the project is worth that savings. If we have to come back, and I'll leave it to the experts, I'll leave it to you to have to make that decision. I would just really question, and I hate that when we're talking about money, it's a lot, it's still a lot of money, but if it comes back, we'll never be able to do a project here for 720,000. Right, to come back for whether pipe 3 or the slip lining, it's going to be millions more to come back in there. So that's where I'm hedging. Absolutely support doing this project. Absolutely support spending what we need to spend to do it right. And if you say doing it right means not going for pump 3 and not doing the slip thing, go for it. But if it comes back to a council, whether it's us or somebody else, and somebody goes back and reads the report later and said, wait a minute, for 720,000, you guys didn't do it. I think we just need to be really careful of what we're doing.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, thank you for your report and taking all of our questions. That was really helpful. Actually, maybe I would like to ask a question during comment, which is, and I want to read it, maybe I'm reading into it, but the value engineering results for the third pump and for the slip line, would you characterize those as modular changes such that in the future the third pump could be, I'm going to maybe make it more simple than it sounds, but it's modular enough that you can just drop it in, is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing you nod. Can you elaborate further on the modularity of the third pump?
I think you're hitting it on the head. All the electrical components are going to be the same. All of the housing, everything is the same except there's no pump. So it's just a simple matter of putting it in there, and I think there's like 4 brackets that you have to install.
Okay, and the slip lining could be a similar, or does that require a little bit more labor to make sure that that is installed correctly?
That would require more labor, but not a huge amount, because it still would be just putting that smaller diameter pipe within the existing.
Got it. And just to clarify, are we here tonight to make this authorization and potentially do the full third pump and slip line?
There are 4 resolutions around this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor Kate,
Yeah,
could I
Oh, yes, City Manager.
clarify that
Yes.
particular point for Councilmember Hill? So again, I think what we were trying to do by looking at the deductive change order is that the cost did come out higher than we expected for the reasons that we talked about. And in talking with a couple of the council members, we thought, well, if we can get the cost down, that would be good, because then we could go try to seek grants for maybe the third pump. We could also be using a smaller percentage of our ARPA funds, and we know we have a lot of other priorities for those. So it seemed like it was a reasonable approach to do that. If the council didn't want to do that, because it isn't, as Vice Mayor Kurtz points out, a huge savings. It was as much savings as we could get with that type of project. The way that we have the resos set up is that the first reso is the full project, the second is the deductive change order, and then the third and fourth are the construction oversight, design stuff. So looking over at April, I think what you would do, should you decide to not do the deductive change orders, is just adopt the other three resolutions and not resolution number 2.
So since you're talking about the context of this is ARPA funds, and you did say that this money, if it's spent here, it's not spent on the other priorities we have in there. So I don't know if we want Director Atiaje to talk about that, but maybe just remind the context of what else. So it might not be a lot in terms of DPW, in terms of the CIP, but it could be, there's a lot of other things that we want to do that are on that list that don't have funding sources. So I don't know if we want to go through them, or if you want to mention, I mean, I'm thinking about the racial equity work that we're going to be
Sure,
doing.
yeah. I actually, I pulled it
it's
up because I
the
was curious
library,
as I was
there's- I mean,
looking at the list.
Yeah.
But, you know, the 4 categories that we have a big chunk of housing and homelessness related goals. Several of those, we have already allocated those funds through the case management and through the SSA. And another one upcoming would be what we were calling the ART, or the Alternative Response Team program, fell under that category, which that would be coming forward to you shortly. We had equity related work, the economic recovery and growth. So those are the things coming out of the economic development strategic plan and having funds to do those. And also then there was just a number of infrastructure improvements, of which this was the largest. But there are also other kind of CIP related projects around climate change and sustainability and adaptation. So those were the other planned uses of the funds.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So based on hearing that, based on your testimony of the modularity of the deductive change order, I'd be comfortable with proceeding with the deductions for now. I think it allows us, I'd rather not do live a puts and takes exercise, but what I'm hearing is that a lot of the other things that we want to prioritize right now, we would not be able to do. I'm comfortable based on what you're saying that we could apply for grant funding, that for the intermediate time, it would not create a safety risk, but that these are forthcoming items that we would want to do. I think we would want to take opportunistic shots at different funding and grant opportunities intermediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Micah.
Yes, thank you again. I think that this is one of those projects that it doesn't feel very attractive, you know, it's a pump. But I feel it's like so basic that we definitely need this. I appreciate Mr. Rhodes bringing that question about the lining, because that's what I was trying to say, you know, with the settling and the different leaks. I deal with that like in a very small scale almost daily, and it's a lot of work. So I guess I was one of the ones that was really hoping that we can apply for more grants for these projects. When I'm listening to the other projects around equity, economic development, climate change, I wonder if there are like grants that we could apply for the other projects as well. It seems to me that maybe the third pump, hopefully we will get a grant for that one, but I wonder if it makes sense to put the lining as a way to avoid in the future, you know, problems, because I'm not an engineer, but just based on what happens when you have leaks and the amount of work that is, and that costs a lot of money as well, I will be inclined for like, you know, 300 and, sorry, I can't remember, 50,000, I think that that's something that I will be happy to support. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bushy.
This is difficult. What's your best guess based on the current state of grant opportunities out there? What's your best guess as to whether you'll be able to get something for the two value engineered components of this?
I mean, new grants are coming out all the time with the infrastructure bill. We have, we get new grants every week that we have to explore whether or not we have the capacity to go after, or a lot of them are reoccurring every year for the next 5 years. So it's just something we just need to look at in more detail on if we think that that would be a good source. I mean, it is a limited thing. We would have a new pump station, just 2 components versus, if we were going to go for a grant on one of the other pump stations that needed a rebuild, we just have to assess what the grant's actually asking for, if they would rather go for something bigger or something that's smaller, that's for redundancy for sea level rise.
Can I add something? So I think it'd be worth pointing out that we did go for grants for the big project and it didn't work, which was strange because we thought like, this is a pretty important project. If the pump station doesn't work, the freeway's flooding. So if these competitive grants, you would think that that would have been attractive enough to get some sort of success. So if we're just going for grants for smaller things, where we're basically telling them, yeah, it kind of works, but if there might be an issue in the future, I just think that there might be a less chance of us getting grant funding.
But this was before all of the infrastructure bills have been passed. And there's seems to be more grant opportunities around. I'm not hearing a high level of optimism on your part, but you will keep trying it. I'm very reluctant to have us sit up here and start making second guessing your decisions. That's something that I'm very reluctant to do. That said, we certainly want to make the best decision, and it's difficult in these circumstances. But I guess that's what we're here for: is to balance. We only have so many ARPA dollars, and if we spend more here, we're not going to have them for the other things that we want to spend them on. This at least has an opportunity to get the additional funds for those components. And at least 2 engineers believe that that these 2 components can be left for later. So that's where I am.
Thank you. I can remember talking about this pump station when you and I first got on the council. I mean, we've been talking about this. We've seen it coming, and it's just such a big chunk of change. So to your earlier point about having the ARPA dollars and the pandemic as being the savior, what a strange silver lining. But I think that is the reality, and it is a big amount of money. And I do appreciate the, was it pound wise and penny foolish? But this is $700,000, and we never have enough money for all the things we want to do. I am so grateful to DPW. I know you don't do these things lightly. I know engineers like to engineer everything. So for you to come and say, we're actually willing to take these elements out, I know all the thought that went behind that, because that is not, well, engineers like to have a lot of bells and whistles, and that's why we like working with you guys. So I am prepared to support it as presented and really appreciate the comments and understanding. And you've heard it. I mean, we have the concern, the 100-year flood, and the way that you talked about how it's been, was tested already. And to Vice Mayor's point, 50 years from now, I don't know if there'll be any of us in this room still, maybe. But I really do believe that it is a great next step. And I would also say, and you didn't really say this in there, that these 2 new pumps are going to be more efficient, that they're going to be better. So we're talking about trying to replace these really old, hasn't worked. So we're already going to have better outcomes and efficiencies from that. So with that, if we are in agreement, and we'll find out when we go through these different items, and there are 4 of them. Let me see. Okay. And there are 4 of you. So Councilmember Micah, do you want to read the first one?
Sure. Okay, so I move to the first resolution awarding and authorizing the city manager to execute the construction agreement for the San Quentin Pump Station Reconstruction Project to Thompson Builders Corporation in the amount of $6,538,725 and authorizing contingency funds in the amount of $685,275 for a total contract appropriation of $7,224,000. That's it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadens Glady.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0.
I'll
Councilmember
read the
Bushy,
second
read
one.
the next. Yes,
I move
please.
that we adopt the resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to execute a deductive change order to the Thompson Builders Corporation construction agreement for the San Quentin Pump Station Reconstruction Project in the amount of $724,000 for a revised contract appropriation of $6,500,000.
Can I ask like a confirming about not including, because this is the one that we are not including, is the reduce.
Correct.
Correct.
These are the value engineering amounts.
And I feel after hearing, kind of like the maybe engineers and contractors about the lining, that maybe that's something that we need to include in here, or am I
Well,
wrong?
let's do this. We'll see if there's a
Okay.
second to the
Okay.
motion that
Thank you.
Mary Beth, or Councilmember Bushy just made.
Mhm.
And then we'll see if there's a vote. If it passes, and then it will. And if it doesn't, then you can make your own motion.
Sounds good.
Okay. So is there a second to this item?
Second.
So moved and seconded, roll call on this item.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kurtz.
No.
Councilmember Yadens Glady.
No.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 3-2, and it can carry on a 3-2 for this item? Yep. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Yes. Next item.
Adopt resolution approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Alpha CM Incorporated for construction management, inspection, and testing services associated with the San Quentin Pump Station Reconstruction Project in the amount not to exceed $515,760.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadens Glady.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Last one, Councilmember Hill.
Move to adopt resolution approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a second amendment to the professional services agreement with CSW Stuber Engineering Group Incorporated for bid construction and environmental compliance support services associated with the San Quentin Pump Station Reconstruction Project in the amount not to exceed $130,550 for a revised total agreement amount of $504,567.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadens Glady.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you. I can't wait for the ribbon cutting. Let's just say. We have one more item. We have the San Rafael Successor Agency. Are there any items to be held from the consent calendar? Any items? There's one item, which is our quarterly investment report. Any items? No. Is there any public comment on this item? The chambers are empty. Is there anyone virtually who'd like to comment on the Successor Agency quarterly investment report?
I see no hands raised. I'll give everyone a moment. I see no public comment.
Thank you. I will close the public comment and bring it back for a motion on this item to approve the consent calendar.
So
Sorry.
moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Bushy.
Aye.
Member Hill.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kurtz.
Aye.
Member Yadens Glady.
Aye.
Chair Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you all for a fantastic meeting. This meeting's adjourned.